morning. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation 121. Forgive me for being slightly late and gay, but we were just discussing when colour television arrived in the UK, which Mitch is currently looking up. I do that every single week. As always, I'm going to start off with a tune.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captive steed, to wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wild. Your new gods are and peoples have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threats of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's love that heathen folly? Bring all your hopes to loss. Take up the white man's burden, not tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the haste of those ye guard, the cry of those ye humor, are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, a loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall wail gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly proffered laurel, the easy young grudge praise. Come out to search your manhood through all of thankless years. No hands with dear bought wisdom, the judgment of your peers. Take off the white man's burden through all of thankless years.
Okay, that was obviously the excellent Chris Garth. And something of a theme for this channel, which I think is a damn good theme too. I would like to wish everyone a happy Coronation Day, but I have my reservations about that, which we will talk about in a bit. Obviously, I'd like to welcome Mitch, with his brilliant avatar this week. How are you going, Mitch?
Same old, same old.
You say that invariably, man. Is that like a particularly like Birmingham saying?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, if it's either we say all right generally, or you just say that same old, same old.
Fair enough. It's fine. It's like, middle of the road stuff. It's like neither glass half empty or glass half full. It's just everything's the same. I just find it amusing that it's your normal way of greeting people. It's kind of cool. AI, how are you going, mate?
I'm good. How are you guys? How are you doing, Iron Duke?
Very good indeed, sir. Very good indeed. I will say to people, Outman is going to be joining us, but he's only just got home. He's probably been working hard, being the chap that he is, and he will be joining us in due course, but he said he was going to be a little bit late. I don't know if we'll get anyone else, but we will see. As always, first topics for anyone.
I don't know. I mean, you got the usual stuff in like Ukraine, or you got this case of Jordan Neely in New York, who with that case it looks like it's going to be another George Floyd, only instead of Minneapolis, it's going to be New York, burnt down.
But wasn't the chap who accidentally ended his existence, wasn't he like not just a civilian ex-US Marine dude?
Yeah, apparently we don't really know. Like, I mean, I heard about this last night from a Lotus Eaters. So, the information goes that the guy was a former Marine. The quote unquote victim, which is a guy called Jordan Neely, even Redditors
hang on, Mitch. He'd been doing bad stuff before this happened to him, hadn't he?
Yeah, he had like 40 counts of like public lewdness to outright aggressive behaviour against him. Apparently, there's a warrant also out for him as well. But
why did this former U.S. Marine Corps guy grab him?
Because he was getting in everyone's faces and behaving very aggressively to the point where everyone felt that he was a danger to people's lives.
He could have been I guess he could have been a viewer in the It could have been like one of our viewers, maybe.
God, I hope not. Bolero 393, who I think is a good chap in the chat, says the Marine Corps, the U.S. Marine Corps actually doxed him. And he says disgraceful, which I totally agree with. But I mean, we should all expect that these days, because just like the cops are not our friends on the right, nor are the senior ranks in the military anymore. And anyone who thinks they are is insane.
If I was that young, that former Marine chap who did all that, if I was him, I would immediately leave the country, go to either Venezuela or Northern Cyprus, somewhere where there's no extradition treaty, and start a new life there, because we saw what happened with the police officers with George Floyd, where it was basically, this is going to be an all-out political trial, and if he had any sense, or if he has any friends, if anyone's friends with him listening, get him out of the country now, because he's not going to make it.
He's not going to get a fair trial. No, he's not. I mean, just imagine. I mean, Steve in the chat says this dude was raving and threatening the whole train car. So this ex-US Marine dude said, all right, well, I'm not going to let him threaten all the women and children in this train car. I'll stop him. And he's not going to get fed. He's liable to get life in jail.
It's really fun. When I saw the story, I kept on thinking of I believe it was an article published by Sam Francis, the infamous one on anarcho-tyranny, and he was referencing, I think it was in the early 90s in North Carolina. You had this Democrat governor, and the crime was spiking at this point across America, and even in North Carolina, especially in the more urban, built-up areas, which also evidently is the high diversity areas as well. And in response to bring down the official crime stats, the governor of North Carolina, implemented like some ridiculous vehicle legislation and driver legislation policies. So basically, you had the scenario where ordinary, members of the public were being given tickets, citations, court appearances for breaking like some ridiculous rule. It was a lot of it was over driving seatbelts and certain, certain speed limits which were changed and on certain roads and freeways, and then of course the gangs and other sort of what you would describe as real crime went on ahead without any sort of involvement in the police, and even the governor, he would go out with the police on as a big way on patrol to crack down on ordinary members of the public who were may have broken the speed limit by not by a significant margin, but he would hail this as a success, and it was like a narco-tyranny. The criminals would run the streets, but the state would go after ordinary members of the public who they know won't fight back, who are
rather than actual criminals, you mean?
Yeah. And this is amplified in decades since, to the point of California, New York, Baltimore, Minneapolis. I mean, take your pick at this point. Detroit, Chicago. I mean, it's everywhere.
Any of these American Democrat cities, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I will also say, in most cities where you have a high population of, I mean, I hate to say it, of black people. I'm not going to school games full Scott Adams.
Yeah, I won't argue with that for 1 second, and I think you're totally correct. I'm going to say two things. First of all, I think all the American Marine Corps dudes in America should get behind this bloke. They really should. And there
wasn't
are
it the Marine Corps that doxed him?
Yeah, and the official Marine Corps, i.e., the generals and what have you. I'm not talking about those people. I mean the real American Marines, the regimental officers, NCOs, and men. Those guys should try and make this bloke a defense fund of some description. I think, people like Don the Pleb, for example, should make this bloke a defense fund. Because he's really going to need it. Because otherwise, I think he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail for a political trial.
I mean, the thing though is we're already seeing in New York and in the wider sort of political sphere, he's guilty, and this is like I think Mitch pointed out, it's another George Floyd moment. And the thing though is, at this point, he has to leave the country. There's no other option. I don't think there's any other option.
Look, I'm not going to tell anyone to break the law on YouTube, but I would absolutely say that I think all US Marine Corps veterans should try and make this dude some sort of a defense fund to get him a damn good lawyer, because he's going to need one.
Has he been arrested yet?
And I don't know. I don't know, and I hope not. But
last I heard, he got released without charges, but everyone knows his name at this point. So I imagine his home will just see loads of the usual suspects, just like calling him a murderer or whatever.
which of course he wasn't, because this dude was going crazy, threatening to chuck people onto the train tracks, and he was just doing what any good man would do with some nutcase threatening women and kids and old people.
I mean, because my Twitter is and I don't know if this is like, because I don't go on Twitter and search like, fight videos or anything like that. But my Twitter feed is filled, really ever since Elon Musk took over, it's been filled of videos of black people just beating the shit out of white people, not just white men, but girls, women and children.
Yeah, you can find thousands of videos of that if you look.
It's just endless, and a lot of it on the subway, in New York in particular. I mean, I've seen a couple today, and it's just, I'm just wondering, I imagine others, and especially Americans, are probably white Americans, are seeing this, and there is that point. Is maybe, I mean, everyone has a breaking limit, because there's a point, especially if imagine you had like a really like a day where you're just everything has gone wrong and you're super pissed off, and then you have to contend with that on the way back home or something. I mean,
look,
hell, I'd snap. I think I'd snap, to be honest.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with anything any of you guys are saying, and like I said, I hope that veteran U.S. Marine Corps dudes like Don the Pleb, etc., will get behind this bloke and at least get him a really good lawyer. But this is an American story, and this is a British and Old Commonwealth channel, so I don't want to carry on with it too long. Look, I don't think this dude did anything wrong. He did what most civilized men would have done to try and save women and children and old people. But this is a British and Old Commonwealth stream, so let's talk about stuff like that. Adam, what's your first subject?
Actually, can we carry on talking about this subject?
Yeah, for a few minutes, but I'm not going to spend an hour on it.
Have you guys covered the 80s subway shooting? Scott's, whatever his name was. I saw someone mentioned it in chat, so I assume you guys have already spoken about it.
No, I haven't. So go ahead.
It's actually what the subway shooting in the film The Joker was based on, but they race swapped him. So it was a white guy in the 80s. Shot.
Oh yes,
yeah.
I remember that. Yeah. He shot like 3 black kids, and because he wasn't like a computer programmer or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
it's quite interesting because if you look back at the public surveys, then like a majority of black people were actually on his side back then. And it is just we talk a lot about like ethnic in-group preference, but a lot of that stuff's actually quite recent. It used to be different than what it was now. But of course, they sunk that guy even back then. The state like went after him. And one of the sort of interesting things recently is like if you talk about sort of interracial, let's say, violence, like you were just saying, there is an extent to which Carol Rivera says it's right. I'm pretty sure that is how it's pronounced, but it's kind of deceiving because of the way it's spelled. But it's where was I going with this? He's got this. Steve Saylor brought this up recently. It might not be Steve Saylor. It might be someone else. Someone in that sphere, in the Saylor gang. That there used to be this tired old explanation where they go, well, you shouldn't bother looking at interracial violence because intraracial violence is higher. But even that's kind of coming to an end, that era. I saw the other day that for 2021 in South Carolina, there were more whites killed by blacks than there were whites killed by other whites. So
isn't that true of the whole United States, that like there are more whites killed by blacks than by whites?
No, usually because there are so many whites even now still. It's just the case that it's close, but there is always more whites killing whites than there are blacks.
But
blacks killing whites.
I'm talking about in proportion to the population.
In proportion to the population, it is the way it is. We'll say. But so you know, I mean, I suppose this is another notch in the bow to the argument that this is all top down, right? It's the elite down.
Of course it is. Yeah. The guy did not look. People have been talking about he restrained him for 15 minutes. It don't take 15 minutes to like strangle somebody. It really doesn't. It takes like 3 minutes or 4 minutes at most.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, so he was being very gentle.
It's like
the funny thing is, they kept saying when he did it, he was grinning. But if you look at the picture of him grinning, even there's a point where even the black guy's smiling, like as he's being choked. So you know, it was. And
also we
mundane.
we don't know how many drugs this black dude had in his system. Like, you know, the drugs that were totally ignored in the George Floyd case, for example.
Yeah.
Which, had he not been taking them, would have meant he wouldn't have died. But that doesn't matter. Put a dude in jail for the rest of his life because this dude was taking drugs. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like, I know as well in this particular case, I don't know if you guys have mentioned this already, but Royal Biscuits actually tipped me off to this earlier. But I mean, that guy had like 40 previous convictions or 40 previous arrests or whatever for various things that he'd done, and he'd even, like, in the past, like, attempted to push people onto the tracks. I'm not sure if he was successful, but he was a menace, and a lot of people knew him. I even saw people tweeting saying, "Yeah, I encountered this guy just before this, and he was like doing this or that to someone." He's one of those characters. He should have been dealt with by the establishment years ago.
Yeah. Royal Biscuit in the chat has pointed out that because this dude was a US Marine Corps dude, he could have killed him pretty quickly had he really wanted to, but he wasn't trying to kill him. He was just trying to restrain him.
And the other passengers were helping him as well. Like, it was a pretty civil affair. You know, you can go back in, like, you know, I'm sure Peter Hitchens has probably mentioned this at times, where, like, you know, the old police in old England, like, and members of the public would, like, help hold people down and restrain people.
If they were bad dudes, yes, they would. Yeah,
and also it's worth pointing out, I think what the guy that was helping him the most to restrain the other guy was an ethnic of some description. He was dark. I'm not sure if he was black, but he was dark.
Steve has just.
Oh yeah, okay,
this. Yeah, absolutely. Look, again, I absolutely really hope that whatever US Marine Corps veteran associations there are, and I'm sure there are many, will actually get behind this dude and try and stop him wasting the rest of his life in jail.
And of course, you know, the lefties.
But it is an American subject.
Yeah. Just one last thing I will say is, of course, that this is. I like to do my across the pond segment. You see,
Go on.
And it is, of course, like the left over there have this thing where they always say, "Oh, it's community self-defense." You know, this is an example of actual community self-defense, and they hate it. You know, the same people screaming defund the police are now screaming for the police. So,
Adam, and it's not allowed for white people. You know
that. I didn't say white, did I?
No, you didn't.
That's
the real case.
Yeah.
It's not a community self-defense for white people is not allowed.
Yeah, it's purely it's just purely language games.
Yeah, it's bullshit. It's bullshit and lies, like most of the world we live in.
That does actually feed a little bit into the subject I was going to bring up.
Go on, then.
So I watched a stream, a competing stream, you could say. It's on a channel on YouTube called Proletarian TV. They have 20,000 subs, and this stream's been up for 2 weeks, and they've got 600 views. Make of that what you will. And it's called Illegal Immigrant Bill, Capitalism and Immigration. And they cover this pamphlet that they've got on capitalism and immigration. And it's kind of all over the place, but they essentially they do a lot of roundabout arguing to basically say that pro-immigration is like the socialist thing, and it's like the left-wing thing, and it's in the proletarians' interests. Although when they try to substantiate that, they essentially just say it's in the proletarians' interest because you can't stop it anyway, which is like a Blairist argument in of itself. And we might as well just unite.
In some funny way, it goes back to what Paul Gottfried, his whole point was of the origin of what you call woke doesn't actually come from Marxism. His theory was that it comes actually from a liberalism, particularly that was formulated in America for that reason alone. Because if you look at Eastern, say the Warsaw Pact country or Soviet Union, those sorts of ideas never actually took place. In fact, it was completely the opposite. And on my channel, there's a stream I did with Cringe Walker where we looked at East Germany and actually see, in many ways, the Cold War it's not as actually what we told. It was sort of actually in many ways, East Germany was more trad than West Germany and anywhere in the West at that time.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, because a lot of these same guys, if you spoke to them about, let's say, I'll use the N word on your stream, denazification.
Yes.
And they will, of course, celebrate, the Soviets doing this great effort for denazification while the West done nothing. But as far as I've ever been able to tell, it was always the complete opposite. The West did an enormous amount of what they called so-called denazification, which was just the destruction of any or the attacking of any sort of belief system that was still sort of to the old regime, as it were.
Yeah, anything that wasn't part of like the mass man, the modern mass man, means it was outdated, outmoded, and then it through logical step, it was fascist. It was the N word being the political ideology of National Socialism. And so that's why you have this. What you see these ridiculous accounts of people that say on Twitter, that say Tory fascists and Tory National Socialists and all that sort. Tories are this and that, because if there's anybody or this person, anybody who has any sort of perennial traditionalist value or any traditionalist sort of value is labeled as a fascist, because that is the logical conclusion of the West de-Germanification program.
I absolutely agree with that. But first of all, fascists in Italy were totally different from National Socialists in Germany. Totally different political ideology in most respects. And of course, all of the stuff that the left uses on not even the right, they use it on the conservative side, for God's sake, which are a load of lefty wanks.
Well,
but,
see, the thing is, in that stream, Duke, and you're going to like this. So they bring up the word progressive quite a lot, and they say, oh, the West attacks progressive governments. And they specifically make the claim that the West sided with the apartheid South African government.
Well,
what?
Well, yeah, look, Britain and America did for a little while in the 80s under Reagan and Thatcher. At the same time when Israel was the biggest supporter of South Africa, by the way.
Yeah.
Absolutely was. Like, loads of South African weapons came from Israel.
Yeah.
Even including the South African nuclear bomb, for God's sake, which the South Africans sensibly got rid of before they placed the ex-terrorist Nelson Mandela in charge. But, one of the few sane things that's happened recently. But, I totally agree with that, mate.
I mean, Thatcher was very lukewarm on South Africa. I mean, she was always accused of being, supportive apartheid because she wouldn't join in boycotts. Remember the whole boycott stuff?
No. So Mrs. Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, both of whom, actually Ronald Reagan was more liberal than Mrs. Thatcher, but both of them supported South Africa at the time because they were facing off against the Soviet Union in Southwest Africa. You know, South African troops were fighting and beating troops from crikey, from Castro's Cuba. They were fighting and beating troops from Castro's Cuba with East German and Soviet advisors, but they were winning. The South Africans were winning.
That was in the sort of early part of it. Like by the time you got to the sort of, even by the halfway point, the Soviets and America specifically were almost in league in sort of finishing off South Africa.
In 1989, Adam, in 1989, hey, I was in South Africa at this time. In 1989, when the Soviet Union fell and that drunken scumbag Yeltsin became the leader of Russia, at that time, yes, they absolutely abandoned South Africa, as did Israel. Amazingly.
Well, it wasn't just that they abandoned it; they kind of actively piled up its funeral pyre.
Oh yeah, 100%. No, I don't disagree for 1 second.
Like you remember, like they even had like films coming out of Hollywood, like Lethal Weapon was like anti-South African.
Oh yeah,
propaganda.
yeah. Lethal Weapon, was it 2 or 3? It was the most one of the most vile, lying, disgusting films I've ever seen in my life. Absolutely.
Yeah,
totally
absolutely vilifying South Afrikaans and Boers. I mean, and to the point where
and ignoring the fact that 40% of white South African guys were actually English-speaking heritage, many of whom were not actually anti-South African. Some were, but most weren't.
That's right.
I got no problem with what Altman and AI are saying there. That's totally true.
Well, see, but was it the Portuguese Angolan conflict is the one I'm thinking of, where the Soviet Union and America were allied with Portugal's opposition?
Kind of, but not really.
It was actually quite interesting.
I can give you the absolute real story on this, but only if people don't interrupt me.
Sorry.
I'm not trying to criticize you, mate. It's just like I do know something about this. Friends of mine were in the South African army that almost took Luanda. That was the capital of Angola. And the only reason they didn't is because the CIA said, no, you can't. Who up until that point had been supporting 100%. Because it was the Cold War, you understand.
I don't really see it that way, but...
Well, all right. If you lived there and you spoke to the soldiers who fought in that campaign, and you would, because I did. Like one of my best mates was a gunner on an Eland armored car, and the Eland armored car, which was basically a French vehicle, really, had a 90mm gun on it that could knock out a T-54-55, and the South Africans did. However, of course, if the T-54-55 managed to hit you, you're all dead because an Eland armored car didn't have very thick armor.
Well, but all I'm saying is I've looked at the receipts after the fact, and it seems like what was going on behind the scenes was very different to what most people thought was going on at the ground.
Oh, yeah, absolutely for sure. Look, it was about Western nations, including Britain and America, wanted South Africa to push the Russians back in Africa. But did they want them to totally win? No, of course not.
No, they were happy to work with Russia as far as it meant deconstructing the old world. European powers.
100%,
and
100%.
This is also something they kind of bring up. They don't mention the term specifically, but they very much play into it in that stream. is the idea of the imperial core, right? And this is sort of this Marxist idea that that it's not actually an American empire that we're all colonies of; it's a white man's empire, oppressing the non-whites essentially.
And you can't have that.
No, and it's kind of funny as well, because one of the things that popped out to me in that stream is they basically regurgitate a lot of arguments that the right destroyed like decades ago, whilst also having these sneery, snarky things about how like the BNP are all thick and stuff like that. And it's like, well, I mean, you don't actually know anything about any of these subjects. Like they're unironically like quoting Jared Diamond's Guns, Germs and Steel, like for quite a while as
One
well.
of the most shitty books ever written and totally crap, but yeah.
And yeah, Jobby thinks I'm wrong. Could be. I don't think so, but it's definitely so. I think it's something that does need discussing more. But anyway, and you know this idea, and of course it's funny because it's like, does the imperial core, if it's actually a thing, if it's actually this solid conspiratorial structure facing out onto the rest of the world, is it actually? Would it blow up its own gas pipeline? No.
You have to remember, and this is where Jobu gets things wrong, is that according to some people on the right, everything bad in worldwide Western history is because of the Brits. This is very, very, very common on the right, is it not?
Well, that's another discussion we need to have at some point.
American
because,
rights.
Yeah,
I would
the
say
Americans were totally innocent, and it was all those evil Brits.
I don't think they all say that. To be fair, though, I mean,
no, they
I
don't
think
all
Furious
say
has
there are
quite
good
a
ones.
yeah.
There are good ones who don't, but like a lot of idiot ones do.
Well, it goes back to that sort of debate was, you know, which empire, which civilization was the origin of woke and everything, and you had that thing of the Britain was like, Britain spread liberalism, so hence and individualism and all that sort of stuff, hence woke comes from the British Empire. And then of course they have the other side that said actually it's America, because if you look at policies like denazification of the West, and
that was American.
Which was American. It was American led. The culture, the jazz music, women wearing jeans, all sorts of moral degenerates and fucking blacks kicking the heads of women in subway stations. I mean, that
half of the American war aims in World War II were to destroy the British Empire. That's just the truth. Anyone who doesn't realize that's the truth is a moron. I'm sorry.
But that was a debate that was probably about a year ago, and that I remember it was particularly between Academic Agent and Turnstein. It was over that Evola thing on the sort of blackification of America. I'll put it in that term.
Well, what did you find? What did you call it? I can't find that in the archive.
I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it I'll say it on my channel, but I will not say it on Duke's channel, because I don't think he would appreciate it.
Gentlemen, we are coming up to 40 minutes, and we have not discussed one British subject yet.
We're discussing a British subject now.
Well, we kind of are. And like later on in this stream, I'll allude to that. But can we talk about some British stuff? What did you guys think of the coronation?
Can we finish off the point Shah Tory was making?
First we can, but then let's move on.
So I'm not going to mention. We all know what that Evola quote is, Evola article is. So we need to go in that. But my point on that was, yes. My point on that was the Evola was pointing out that that America is an anti-civilizational force, and that even the white population of America, with the introduction of like jazz and sort of black music, was turning them. I think it was down to the idea of it was reducing them to the Lizzos, and it would reduce all of us to this, and the fact that it was on Italian radio, it was largely forced. I mean, no one really wanted it at first. It just happened to be forced down their necks, you know.
I don't think most average Americans are lefties and bad people. I really don't. But the government, yeah, 100%.
I mean, one thing I would say, and this again, I'm not attacking Americans. This, I did see a, you know, when you come across like country music, like current year country music, and when I think of country music, I think of people.
I detest country and western music, and Australia
Yeah.
has its own brand of it, and I still detest it. So yeah, whatever.
But country, the country western music lot in the past, especially some of the more, you know, the sort of more sort of obscure ones, they were, you know, Appalachian mountain proper southern hillbilly types. Yeah, what I would describe as true, my idea of a true southerner, right? But now you're seeing like all these girls with abs. There was a girl with tattoos across
Don't
her
like girls
arms,
who have abs. Girls should have gently
wearing
rounded
jeans.
bellies. Jellies.
Yes.
Girls should have
Wearing
gently rounded bellies. They don't need abs.
Yes. Wearing jeans, wearing sort of like near enough male clothing, singing, you know, with a, you know, on the back of a pickup truck with an American flag, and it's.
Yeah,
I remember
go and watch the excellent American series, which everyone tells me is not woke, called Yellowstone, which is totally
Well, there's a whole series of
100%
memes on that.
woke. It's totally woke.
Don't stop using that fucking word.
Look, like women have punch ups like blokes, which they never do, of course. Women pull hair and scratch and shit.
Yeah, I say if you've ever seen a women fight, they go for the
they
hair.
don't have punch ups like blokes. Trust me, they can't,
Yes.
because their little hands have little bones in them that can't really hit people without breaking.
And also, if you've ever been punched by a woman, if you've ever been like the one that
I've
really
been punched
like full on
by a
rage
woman
punch,
several times, and I just laughed.
it's well for me, because of my stature and everything, it's actually rather funny because it has happened, and it's like being attacked by like a toddler.
Yeah,
in some cases.
it's funny. It's funny. It's like a little girl trying to punch you, and you just that's what I did. I just laughed at her. But you know, because like, you know, women can punch me, but it doesn't do anything. I have, however, ducked on occasion when they chucked big vases at me and things like this. But you know, women will.
Or the claws. I have had the claws happen before, so that is painful. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, I mean, yeah, Yellowstone is. I watched like a few episodes of the first season, and then it was like the start of the second season, and like because one of the prodigal sons of Kevin Costner's character, he was married to this Indian.
Yeah,
Indian in the sense
American Indian girl, and she is quite cute, to give her a due.
Yeah, and she was quite normal, like, and then she had like she was beaten. Then she was like had the brain injury, and then like at the start of the second season, she's like an ultra like Indian race realist, and it's like, yeah, I'm not hanging around with my white oppressor anymore.
No.
And so, you know, he's no longer like in the longhouse.
Well, he kind of is, because he still loves her. So yeah. No, look, guys, we're 43 minutes in, and we haven't done anything British. I'm sorry.
We have. We've been talking about like a lot of British stuff.
Well, kind of, but like, look, Britain's much more based than America is my like original opinion. Sorry, let me change that. Traditional Britain is much more based than America, and I run a British and Old Commonwealth channel. So however much you guys want to talk about Americans, and let me just say once more, that dude in New York needs to get every single US Marine Corps veteran organization supporting him, because otherwise he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail, guys, for not doing anything bad. You know, because I don't dislike Americans. I have many American friends who are good men. I just detest the American government, but I also detest the British and Australian governments. So, you know. Can we please speak about something now that is absolutely British? Anyone who
Coronation.
wants to. Well, you can do
Shall
that. I go for it.
Yeah, shall I do the cook? So I think that's sort of like a bit of an elephant in the room at this point. So yeah, coronation. To be honest, I wasn't really paying attention because I kept on seeing articles and like snippets online of changes to the ceremony, that you're going to have like the Jewish rabbi, the UK head Jewish rabbi, and all these other faiths taking part. And my understanding was, I thought they were going to take part in the actual ceremony itself, as in like with the oil and up with the bishops at the altar.
I didn't watch it, all right. I watched a load of the rehearsals on British Forces
Yeah.
News, which is a Ministry of Defence run channel paid for by British taxpayers, which spends 99% of its time spreading the idea of more women in the British Armed Forces and more diversity, and everything real about the British Armed Forces is fake. So I actually watched none of it. I didn't watch
Right.
any of the coronation. I think it was a skin suit. Let me finish. I think it was a skin suit. I think that everything about it, like the the guys who run the British government, from Indian banker Rishi Sunak on down, are anti-British. The British civil service, at least the senior people in it, are almost all anti-British. The very senior officers of the British Armed Forces are all anti-British, and the mainstream media in Britain is almost entirely anti-real Anglo-Celtic British. And this was my view on this, and so I didn't even watch it. I didn't watch a thing of it because, like, the only bit I might have liked was the pageantry of the military parade, but there were so many women in it. It was totally ruined for me. Totally ruined for me. So AI, carry on.
Yeah, so I mean, going into it, I set my expectations to bottom zero, because again, one big change was the hereditary peers weren't going to swear their oaths, which is the I guess the dating back to well, William the Conqueror's time, maybe possibly even before.
Forever,
Yeah,
basically.
forever. Yeah, forever. Um, um, so that was instead it was going to be the people swearing, which I thought was ridiculous, and I kept on thinking about the state of the French monarchy just after the storming of the Bastille, and that
Skin
you had
suit.
like the
Skin suit.
basically it was a skin suit monarchy under the control of a revolutionary government and everything. So that was ridiculous in my mind when I was going into it. I honestly expected like just like morbidly obese black women twerking up and down the up and down the cathedral and everything else. Um, so I was my expectations were very low. Uh, So what I was surprised about, and to be honest, the ceremony itself, I was actually pleasantly surprised, and the reason was a few things were changed. From my
Yeah, a
understanding
few
in the
things
ceremony,
were changed, yes.
they were reverted back. So, for instance, the um, during the religious part of the ceremony, there wasn't any Catholics or Jews or well, uh, I mean, we won't go into that part, but there wasn't the rabbi and the Hindus and the Buddhists and all that sort of stuff weren't taking part. They were just seated like everyone else.
Black singers,
The
Patriarch Archive says.
Yeah, I'll get onto the black singers bit. Yeah, and then so during the service, you then had um the sort of anointing with the holy oil, which I thought was quite good. After that, he was presented with that linen, that gold linen coating and everything, which again, nice touch. And then what was quite nice was that when he was handed the sword of office by Penny Mordaunt.
Oh my
Yeah,
God, Penny Mordaunt.
yeah, she was holding that sword like nobody's business.
Lovely, yeah. So
I tell you what,
traditional.
the way that she held that sword, I mean, you know that she's she has experience in that field. And
She's a scumbag,
um,
but yeah.
um, and yeah, when the sword was presented to him, to the king, there was a nice bit of Byzantine mute chants and music from the Orthodox
If
Church,
if
which was,
only the king had turned around and said, "Penny Mordaunt ain't giving me that sword,"
yeah. I
but
mean
that was
that
never going to happen, of course.
no, unfortunately not. But I thought the Byzantine music bit was quite nice. It actually felt like Justinian, sort of being his coronation. I thought it was quite a nice touch in some way. Apparently, that was included by Charles because it was a sort of a nod to Prince Philip, who of course who was the sort of crown, was he the crown prince of Greece or the Helens? I don't know what the
I
official
don't
title
know.
was.
I thought I always regard Prince Philip as a brave Royal Navy officer in World War II. That's the only thing I ever think
Yeah.
about him. About I don't
Um,
care
and
about
then
the other stuff.
um, um, and then of course, yeah, then you had like a pause in it between hymns, and then you had the black jazz thing where it was like
Ugh.
a
Vomit.
gospel bit, and I mean that was like what was it? It was like 5-6 minutes of it, which was it felt like an
Yeah,
eternity. To be honest. It was absolutely
fabulous.
horrendous.
Look.
And
Like I said, I didn't watch any of this because I knew exactly what it was going to be, and it's a
the
skin
thing though
suit.
is, overall, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I thought the ceremony itself, in some strange way, taking like Rishi Sunak reading from the Bible, or
Was
um,
Rishi Sunak reading from the Bible?
yes, he gave a speech. I told that, but this is the thing. Yeah, I know.
He's
This
not.
was the best.
He's not even a Christian. For
But
God's
this is
sake.
but this is the thing. While watching it, what was weird was it kind of felt like there were two services going on, because when he had his part, it was very disjointed because you had the bishops with Charles and they were getting everything, all the regalia sorted and going through the motions of prayer and all that goes on in that bit,
The
and
woke
everything.
bishops, of the Church of England, of course.
Well, I mean, the only thing it was the Bishop of Durham. You had the Archbishop of Canterbury, and you had the Bishop of Durham and the
Yeah,
Bishop
the
of.
Archbishop of Canterbury is not even a Christian, but okay.
Well, he's not even Christian. You had the Bishop of Durham and the Bishop of Bath and Wells, who I've met, and to be honest, I've spoken to him. I don't know if he's his character. I can't really say, but I mean, overall, it wasn't that bad. I mean, in some weird way, maybe even if they didn't believe it,
It was a skin suit.
it did adhere because there were significant changes, I think, in input.
There were indeed, yes.
There were significant changes to the ceremony, because one thing that I thought was really weird was Rishi Sunak's bit, and then the rest of it was completely it was disjointed. So I think there was the original coronation where it was like uber skin suit woke, just humiliation ritual, and it did go on because you did have that, the Sunak bit, the Black Gospel singers.
Yep.
I also included when Charles was presented with the gospel that dates back to the 8th century, that was from Saint Augustine, which I believe was what was used to convert the Anglo-Saxons. So this was a significant relic. It wasn't just any old bit of document. It was very important, and it was presented by a female bishop. Now, I
what
took
a
great exception.
surprise! So
I took
actually,
which
in
but I
Christian
didn't.
doctrine, a mere female bishop would make that like not Christian. You know
But
that.
what I
AI.
but what I didn't. One thing that didn't make sense is the whole ceremony itself was all being like, there was only like male bishops up there. I don't even know where she came from. She just like came out with the book from nowhere, and
Yep.
so that took me bits. But because I was thinking to myself, oh, there's no female bishops here. Oh, that's a nice surprise. And then, no, obviously I was proven wrong. And then she went off with the book, and then she wasn't seen again. It was all done by male bishops. All of them were white, by the way. White
but the
bishops.
Archbishop of Canterbury is hardly a Christian. Let's be honest.
Yes, yeah. And then then you had
I'm an agnostic, and I'm probably more Christian than the Archbishop of Canterbury of the Church of England, to be honest.
And then of course you had the actual crowning itself, which I thought was fine. There was nothing in that was deviated, because again, certain words were to be changed
Yes.
in that. So one of which was
Yeah.
do you swear to? It was about confronting evil, like the sort of Christian bit of to defeat evil and everything else, and that was removed to basically reform, for reform or something like that. But somehow, I don't know if it was the king or whoever changed it back. So a lot of those phrases that we were told were being removed actually remained in there, which was fine. And then of course you had the swear, the swear. Well, what would be the swearing of the peers, but the people's one, that was just non-event, because it was just everyone
because there
in
were
the
no
abbey just went, God
peers.
save the king.
Imagine
It's
there
just everyone in
being
the
no
abbey
peers.
everyone in the abbey just went, God save the king, and that was it. So it wasn't just complete waste of time.
Couldn't
I
have
mean,
you couldn't have a couple of peers turning around and saying, "Sorry, you ain't my king." But
but this is but Andrew, hold on a second. This is the most ridiculous thing. The peers, the life peers, were there, and to top this off, because they were
well, the
told they
life
weren't.
peers are not real peers anyway. Let's be honest. I mean, the real peers are
No.
very
Hold on,
few.
hold on. No, Andrew, stop cutting me off on this, because I'm trying to get this out. So
All
really
right,
sorry, but
Karen, beg your pardon.
when I say life peers, I misspoke. I mean hereditary peers, because there are 40 peers who
Yes,
sit in the House of Lords who are hereditary, because
yes.
that they select 40 out of them at any one time.
The
Okay,
the,
so
the old aristocracy of
the
Britain.
old aristocracy. I didn't mean like some random Labour donor from 20 years ago. I mean,
enough. Fair
yeah.
enough. AI.
So
And
I didn't mean to snap.
I apologize.
Sorry, I didn't mean to snap though. It's just I was trying to get that out, and I misspoke in it. Yeah. So that was my point was getting at, that they were present, like the Duke of Westminster and everyone downwards. So the old aristocracy were sort of present, but they were also told beforehand they were not to wear the traditional regalia for coronations or for courtly duties.
I
But
beg
that
your pardon, AI. They didn't wear ermine and all this stuff.
Sorry.
Like I said, they didn't wear ermine and all this stuff. I didn't watch it, so like I said, I chose not to watch it because I knew it was
Well,
distorted.
I was listening to Starkey's commentary. Apparently, they were wearing it was changed, or they were wearing like the red cape and certain certain sort of regalia. So they were, but it was changed at the last moment, like a few days beforehand. So I don't know what happened there, but it was changed.
Wow. I'm sorry. Look, the aristocracy of England, on the highest occasions, they wear ermine and their robes, and like if they didn't, then it's just crap. I'm sorry.
I mean, they wore the robes. To be honest, I wasn't even noticing. I didn't even know they were there until Starkey pointed it out at the end, because I was like, well, hang on a sec, I thought they weren't there. And then it came to the point, well, okay, well, if they're there, they were invited and they were sitting like in the front row. Why didn't they just go ahead with the traditional swearing of oaths? Because that,
Yeah,
they were the
why
present.
didn't they swear loyalty to His Majesty the King? That's
Yeah, I mean, the only one who
happens.
did. Yeah, I mean, the only one that did was Prince William, the Prince of Wales. He was the only one that did.
He's about my last hope for the royal family, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, he looked. Him and Kate, they looked pretty good. They were wearing, I think what's been described as like Anglo-futuristic sort of style getup.
Didn't see it, man. Didn't watch it. Like I said, I couldn't watch it, AI, because just the military parade. Go and watch. I put up on our Discord a link to Queen Elizabeth II's coronation in 1953. There was 3 times as many military and armed forces dudes there as there were on this one, because, of course, the British military was vastly bigger in 1953. They were all straight white men, and all of the crowds were enormously Anglo-Celtic and white. If you cannot see the difference between that and what just happened today, then you are missing something enormous in your understanding of what a nation really is.
Yeah, I mean, my point is, I was pleasantly surprised, given the build-up that we were expected. I thought it would be just absolute, literally like no white people, no white bishops, and it would be a secular service, and there'd be no connotations to Christianity, and no transcendental part spiritual aspect of it at all. And I also, for me, it was the multi-faith bit which was being put out, because I honestly thought that, when that point where the king is, where the monarch is put behind like those curtains or shroud or whatever, and is sort of doused in oil. I honestly thought that would be done by, the chief rabbi and the.
I didn't ever think that was going to be that. I just thought that they would say that.
From what I was
when we
reading,
see the result, we think we've won, which of course we haven't. It was just they were always baiting and switching.
I think the only thing that I would say was, I think the subtle changes that were made at the last second did anger a few people. Like, immediately when the service had concluded, the BBC people, who were like the usual race grifters, like that bullshit historian guy, and this bold black woman who I've never heard of before, just went off on one and said they had this opportunity to be more diverse and inclusive, and they just didn't do anything, and it was too many white people and everything.
That's a con, AI. It's a con. It's to make us think that these people are not as bad as they really are. And I'm sorry, I don't fall for it anymore.
I mean, well, yes, I think that you could argue a con, but I think there was changes made by the king at the last second, and that pissed them off. Now,
I hope you're right. I hope you're right, but I have no confidence in that. I really do hope you're right.
I don't think. I don't think the king did it consciously, saying, "Oh, I'm going to get one over the liberal left tossers." I don't think he was thinking in that terms. I of course not. I think in his, I honestly think that he was just, maybe he was. I think for in some ways he is a perennial traditionalist, even though it might not be for British values in all its in any way. But
maybe.
I think there was a part of him that, I mean, this is the thing. All these woke people, right? Okay, they have to sit in the Abbey for 3 hours. All these politicians, all the the top people in
But
Britain,
they don't care because they run it. They don't care because they run us. 3 hours is not a big deal to them.
Maybe not, but I mean, I do think
not. But yeah,
I do think that I do think changes were made, and I don't think it was expected, and I think it angered. I think because I noticed that the anger, it wasn't. It was like they were taken by surprise, watching it in real time. The especially on the BBC lot, they were. I mean, Starkey was surprised because he thought it would be a total, you know, a total multicultural fest as well.
No. Starkey had been defending the king for months, so yeah, no, I don't totally agree with that. But all right.
No, well, no. I'm not talking about the king. I'm talking about the service itself. By the.
Oh, okay, yeah, right. Okay, right.
By the actual, the powers that be.
Look, if you're going to do a skin suit, you make it a skin suit, which is what I think they did.
The trouble is they can't help them with the skin suit though. Okay, they had like the black gospels. They had the black gospel stuff in there, but
right. But that's traditional British, right?
But the thing is, if they, given the current state of the world, given the current state of the world is, given the current state that the world is in the moment, I would expect them to not just do that, but literally have fucking dildos flying leftwards.
Okay, all right. But is the black gospel singers in any way, shape, or form traditional British?
Of course not. No.
Thank you. That's all I want to know. Alman, you're a trad Brit. What did you think about this coronation?
No idea. I didn't watch it.
No, nor did I. You see, this is the thing. I couldn't watch it. I watched quite a lot of the practices that the British Army were going to do for it, where like 25 or even 30% of the people doing these practices were women, and they were giving very high spots to any immigrant they could possibly find. And I just thought, no, I can't watch this. This is a skin suit.
I couldn't watch it because I was at work.
All right, but I didn't watch it because I didn't want to, because it would have just made me angry.
And I don't watch any TV anyway.
I don't watch TV, but the point I'm trying to make, Alman, is I didn't watch this. I mean, I did watch Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's funeral because I thought, that's the end of an era, and everything about this coronation just makes me even more sure that is true, because this king is not my king. I mean, he is my king. I don't have any choice about it. He is absolutely Charles III, my king. But I am not a big supporter. And to say that I am not a big supporter of, in inverted commas, Queen Camilla would be an understatement.
I mean, all I have to ask is AI. So you said Starkey commented on it. Was that on GB News?
Yeah, I didn't watch the BBC News one. I don't. All I saw was snippets afterwards on like Twitter of like BBC News, because I just saw David Lammy on there, and I was like, I'll put it on GB News, like on the radio, or when I actually got a chance to TV, I sort of put it on that in the background. And yeah, I mean, it was good to listen to his commentary because of like the pure historical side of it, talking about where this tradition comes from. You know, this sort of goes back to Anglo-Saxon times. I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. You know, so that was quite nice, and to have his commentary on that. I don't know what I can't say what the BBC commentary was during the service. I can imagine what it was like though, but yeah.
I mean, even at the opening of Parliament, the BBC commentary is always atrocious. It just generally is. They almost can't help themselves.
I know the ITV lot went into talking about white privilege and the usual white guilt stuff. So yeah, so I can only imagine what like Channel 4 was on about. I think Channel 4 were covering like the Republican counter protesters or something.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, if you're gonna, like in this instance, like it's almost like getting angry at newspaper headlines, but in this instance, it's a coronation. I don't think people should sort of let it have that sort of power over them. I probably would have tuned in and watched it, but maybe I'm not sure. But I didn't get a chance anyway, and I don't really care.
I don't know, guys. Look, I've seen young men say that they liked it, and I can understand how people like the Skull of the Pipes and the military bands and all the rest of it. But like about 20% of the, in inverted commas, men in that parade were British. The whole numbers of the British Armed Forces in the parade were not even a third of the number involved in Queen Elizabeth II's coronation in 1953. It was a skin suit. Like Rishi Sunak, the Indian manco who is the British Prime Minister, not because he was elected by anyone, not even the Conservative Party, just because he was parachuted in. And many of his senior ministers are not at all British, and anyone who claims they are is a lefty or a moron. What do you guys think about that?
Well, according to Jonathan Pye, he was born in Southend, so we're all idiots. You know, if you're born in Southend, he's British. So
to enormously rich Indian parents, and he's married to one of the richest heiresses in India.
Yes.
I mean, the dumb thing about the Pye argument is even if he wasn't born in Southampton, he could have been born in like bloody New Bombay, and Jonathan Pye would have still said he could have been Prime Minister. So why even bring it up?
Yeah, exactly.
I was born in Turkey. I'm not Turkish. I'll never be Turkish.
What's your chances, AI, of becoming the president of Turkey? Do you think?
Well, according to Jonathan Pye, I'm Turkish, idiot. You know, I'm Turkish. I guess I could be. You know, I could.
And does anyone think that any Anglo born in India today has any chance whatsoever of becoming the leader of India?
Well, this is the thing. After learning this, I had to throw out all my Kipling shit off the shelves. I ain't having no bloody Indian.
Yeah, except Kipling lived in a different age. But, you know, even Kipling didn't imagine an Indian being in charge of Britain, did he?
No.
So, yeah, look, like I said, I didn't watch this. To let you know how different the world is, in 1953, when Queen Elizabeth II was crowned, my father was in an enormous military parade in the Suez Canal zone in Egypt of British forces that were holding the Suez Canal zone in Egypt. And this one, I didn't even watch 3 minutes of. I watched some of the rehearsals. I saw all the girls. And I'm sorry, I can't watch women marching in military parades and take them seriously because they just look as ridiculous as they are in military circumstances. So yeah, I didn't even watch it. I
Are
didn't
you
watch
saying you
any
wouldn't
of
even
it.
have a Gaddafi style guard?
No, no, I wouldn't even have a good. Well, they did him a lot of good, didn't they? When
Well,
when
yeah.
when they were stuffing him up the arse with bayonets, and the brilliant what was her name? The American woman who said, "We came, we saw and conquered."
Clinton.
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton. When she said, "We came, we saw, we conquered," while she watched him being stuffed up the arse with bayonets, I don't think Gaddafi's woman guard did him much good, did they?
No, it didn't seem that way.
I think they fled like as soon as Tripoli was like stormed.
It almost sounds like every woman I've ever met, but who knows?
Well, there is that.
Don't get me wrong. Look, I like and adore women, but they're not going to stand there when there's a great deal of violence around. That's not their deal.
When they had, remember those whole all-female Ukrainian battalions in at the start of the conflict, right? Like
the ones that have never seen any action, you mean?
Yeah. And it became very evident, like self-evident quickly, when there was that point where we were all not joking, but just raising the obvious, where if they had to face Russian Chechen forces,
or any male Russian forces,
the reason I said Chechen is because those and the sort of battalions from the Caucasus regions, because they are a bit more different than your average Russian. They're more barbarous.
Hang on though. To be fair, I've seen quite a lot of video, and I think that Mitch will confirm this, of Chechen forces like helping little old ladies and women and children escape from areas like run by the Ukrainians.
Yeah, but those civilians are Russian though.
Absolutely, they're Russian. Of course they are.
I mean,
like if I was going to save people from like the enemy, they'd probably be British, or Australia. It's what you do.
But the thing that was like the female Ukrainians. I mean, let's be honest. That scenario is never going to end well. In any
women are shit soldiers, mate. They're shit. They can't carry the weight. You've got to be able to carry at least 60 to 80 pounds as a modern infantry soldier. In fact, as any infantry soldier going back to the world of ancient Rome, if you can't carry 60 to 80 pounds, you cannot be a good infantry soldier. And in addition to that, you have to have some sort of killer instinct, which the vast majority of women totally lack. And good on them. I mean, women are great nurses. They can help people who are in trouble. And it's not a better or worse thing. It's just that men are different to women. We just are.
Yeah.
Obviously. On that note, though, I have to head off because I've got to get up quite early, and I'm very tired as it is. So.
Not a problem, Adam. Can I ask you just one more thing before you go?
Yeah.
You know Gonzalo Lira, I presume.
Yeah, I've never watched any of his stuff, but
I'm not a big Coach Red Bull fan at all. But did you notice that he's been arrested by the Ukrainian secret police, the SBU, I think they're called?
Yeah, I heard the rumor. Yeah.
It's not a rumor. There's video of it. So
there's video of it. I saw video of that. Yeah.
I mean, I thought he was a twat for not getting out of Ukraine, but I do think, like I said, not a big fan, but I think we should just publicize the fact that the Ukrainian secret police have arrested him, so they just don't kill him, because I don't think he's done anything that deserves to get killed by.
I mean, he should have left the country when he first got questioned, like over a year ago.
Yep, I agree.
I actually thought he did leave the country. I didn't know he actually remained there, but because I stopped following him after that saga, I wasn't. I saw. Well, it was actually when I stopped following updates on the war, because it was kind of it everything was like tit for tat information, and it was obviously, week by week you can't really just, it actually sort of reminded me a bit of the COVID stuff. It was kind of like, oh, well, I'll check in back in like a month's time on any one time just to see what's gone on, or if there's any like major news that I start seeing, um, like with Bakhmut or something like that. So I mean, I'm just surprised he stayed, because I thought that was ridiculous.
Well, he's
Um,
married there though, isn't he? I
No,
think he's
yeah,
got
he
family
has,
there.
but I'm pretty sure he said he got his wife and kids out before the war started. So I just don't know why he stayed
I don't really
there.
know. I don't know enough about it.
No,
I mean,
Anyway, I'll leave you guys to it. I'll speak to you
Alright.
later.
Thank you very much for joining us, Armin. You're always welcome, mate. And
Thank
go
you.
on.
Yep. Good night, all.
No worries. Look, I just think, like I said, I'm not a big Gonzalo Vieira, aka Coach Red Pill fan, but I do think that all of us on the right, we should publicise the fact that he has been arrested by the SBU, which is the Ukrainian secret police. They're the equivalent of what used to be the Soviet KGB. What do you think about this, Mitch? You haven't said much for a bit, mate.
I mean, when it comes to Coach Red Pill, I mean, I don't particularly think highly of him. I mean, he behaves like a rat in terms of.
Same.
I mean, for example, he shills for Russia inside a city that is still Ukraine controlled to this day. So he's just inviting the SBU to kick his head in or whatever. So I just don't really like.
I do feel totally the same, Mitch. But I at the same time, there's a little tiny bit of me thinks that because he was pro-Russian, we should at least mention him.
Like, I'm very apathetic when it comes to him. I mean, I just don't really care what happens to him either way. To be honest, I just don't. His personality. I mean, for example, a guy I know, because apparently he went to Martin Sellner's wedding, and in the drinks that happened after, he basically drank a lot and ate a lot and didn't pay for anything he consumed at that particular party. So,
does anyone pay for anything at a party?
like, I remember like something like I can't remember the details precisely, but like he was over there to attend like a party, and for Martin Sellner and his wife, can't remember her name.
Yeah. The very pretty girl that Martin Sellner is married to, and he recently beat that charge in Austria, didn't he?
Yeah, he could have gotten 3 years in prison if he got found guilty, but fortunately, God was on his side. So,
Valtra in the chat is reminding me it's Brittany Pettibone, who is a very cute girl, I have to say. So good on mine for that one. And I am very glad that he's not going to prison. Look, like I said, I'm no big Gonzalo Lira fan or Coach Red Pill fan, but I do think we should note that the Ukrainian secret police, the SBU, have arrested him just in case they decide to kill him like they have so many other people. Because the SBU, if you think the Russian security services are bad, look up the SBU. But of course, you can't say that in the West because we're supposed to lie about this stuff in the West and pretend that Ukraine is good somehow, which they're not. They're just not. I'm sorry.
I mean, yeah. I don't understand why he didn't make an effort to get behind Russian lines in Ukraine.
Same, absolutely the same.
So if he wanted to do that, I mean, at least he could do it in, Donetsk or Lushenko or Mariupol or somewhere like that. He could just, or Crimea. He could just do his stuff from there. He'd probably even get paid, for doing it.
I don't know if he'd get paid, but yeah, he should absolutely have got out of Ukraine. I totally agree. That to me is total sense.
Why was he out in you? I didn't pay him much attention because
I think he had a wife and 2 kids from that part of the world.
Oh, so they didn't. Right, okay. So they actually came. But I thought that he just flew out there just because.
No. He had a wife who I think he met somewhere or over in the West, and then had 2 kids with. But I have no idea. It's just what I see on the internet.
Yeah, another red flag with Red Pill is the fact that I think he was living there since 2018. I think that's when he moved over to Eastern Ukraine.
Yeah,
and
sounds about right.
And he didn't learn the language at all. He can't speak it at all, which I'm thinking, so he's lived there for 5 years at this point.
To be fair, Mitch, I am totally useless at languages. I could live somewhere from 2018 and I would be absolutely shit. I'd probably be able to say hello and thank you at this stage because I'm useless at languages. But you're very good at them, obviously, because you speak many of them. So yeah, just to say that.
I mean, if
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, if I move to a region like that, like a foreign country, that's like a permanent fixture. I mean, I would make all effort to integrate myself into the population. Like if I moved to Donetsk, I'd probably convert to Russian Orthodoxy and do my damnedest to learn the language. So
I don't know. I moved to Northern Natal in South Africa. I didn't convert to Dutch Orthodox or any of that. The big boy church or any of that stuff. I was an Englishman. I paid for it in some respects, but I did it.
I mean, with Afrikaans, it's pretty much close enough. I imagine you can have a decent conversation with an Afrikaner expect in English. I to understand it.
You can have a good punch up too, though, Mitch. I got to tell you. But yeah, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking, it's I don't know, because Afrikaans, like with English, is a Germanic language, yada yada yada. So I imagine, to some extent, you'll at least be able to have a basic conversation with them. Let's say,
Mitch, because you're gifted at languages, you would have been able to live there for, I don't know, 6-8 months, and you'd probably be able to have basic conversations. I lived there for 15 years, and my Afrikaans was absolutely shit. Because I find it really hard to get interested in languages. All right, it's just me. I just do. Some people find it hard to get involved in maths or grammar or whatever it might be. I'm not very interested in languages. It's very difficult for me to do that. And I reckon after 18 months in South Africa, I could speak maybe a dozen Afrikaner words, and I never got much beyond about 50. But that's just me, and it's my failing. It's I'm not slagging off anyone. It's just how I was. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I suppose we ought to go on to what's happening in Ukraine. And Mitch, what's happening in Ukraine?
I don't know what's going on in Bakhmut, where Yevgeny
I think the Russians have almost won in Bakhmut now, haven't they?
There's only 8% of the city left.
Yeah, so. And the few bits that are still left, the Russians are destroying, really.
Yeah, they dropped tons upon tons of incendiary bombs on it to the point where the place basically looks like Dresden. in the aftermath. So
yeah,
I'm just wondering how well that barbecue went. Well,
I
it's very
just
insensitive.
think I just think this the guy from like what's the Russian group that were there, the Wagner group, the guy from the Russian Wagner group who says we're leaving on the 10th of May. I think they can leave on the 10th of May because on the 10th of May, Russia will have captured the damn place.
Yeah, that's been sold in this country as like them withdrawing, like giving up.
Yeah, it's
Which
a
is
lie.
ridiculous.
It's a lie.
Yeah, I mean,
as far as I can work out, Wagner, and it's not just Wagner. There's been loads of Russian forces supporting them in Bakhmut, but by the 10th of May, there aren't going to be any Ukrainians left in Bakhmut. So yeah, Wagner will probably get withdrawn to the rear, where they can like get resupplied, get reinforcements, and all the stuff they're going to need for the next battle. That's what I think is going to happen. But Mitch, you're a Russian speaker, so what do you think about
I mean, Prigozhin's known to be a bit of a, for one of a better word, he's known to be a bullshit at times. Like sometimes, like he's not really the military guy for Wagner. He's more of a businessman. He's the one who sells Wagner over to, let's say, MLD or in Russia, or he'll sell them to African warlords, and he acts as a salesman. He's not really like he'll have some sense of idea of okay, what maneuvers are they doing in Bakhmut, but he doesn't do the minutiae of the detail. He devolves all that power.
He seems to go to the front a fair number of times, to give him his due, which is like good of him.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, there was a video we put out where it was like 2 minutes of him just like swearing and insulting Shoigu and Gerasimov because he says like they're not giving him enough artillery shells because in the case of Bakhmut, the Ukrainians have started using more artillery ammunition, probably because of this offensive that's bound to happen sometime. And because of that, it's a situation where Wagner doesn't get any more artillery shells than what is normal. So then it's a position where he's suffering a lot of losses, but he can't get any more than what is the usual amount.
That was the one with the dead Russian soldiers in the background, yeah?
Yeah, particularly.
Yeah, no, I saw that, and I just think that's I think that's a deliberate thing to fool the Ukrainians, to be honest. But that's just me.
I mean, if you know, like, if you're going to air your dirty laundry, you wouldn't do it in public like that unless it was absolutely necessary.
No,
I mean, it's like, for example, Ramzan Kadyrov said, "Oh well, the Chechens suffered getting like enough artillery guns and maintaining them until the MLD responded to their complaints." So it's not like the Russian MLD is completely blind and deaf. As much as cancerous as Russian bureaucracy may be, they will respond at some point all the time. So I don't believe this idea that Wagner are getting zero artillery or they're not getting enough. It's probably the Ukrainians have started up their artillery bombardment, while Wagner gets no more than usual, like before this new artillery off the Ukrainians. So now it's a position where he's suffering loads of losses. To be fair, though, I mean, Wagner, I've heard conflicting rumours where, on one hand, they're sending more reinforcements into the city as well as to another area, Siversk, which is like quite a distance away from Bakhmut.
I just feel like Bakhmut is like basically captured by the Russians now, and I think that video was disinformation for the Ukrainians and lesser so to the West. There's lots of stuff coming out at the moment that the Ukrainians are going to attack right in the south over those marshy lands and the the mouths of the Dnieper River and all the rest of it, which I think is quite likely. I just don't see where they're going from there.
Like, I can't see any scenario where Ukraine's successful, but then we don't know what Russia's going to do. I mean, is Russia just going to have something like where they wait for the Ukrainians to attack, have them exhaust all their combat power, and then do the same to the Ukrainians what the Russians did to the Germans after Kursk, or you just go on the offensive and take huge amounts of land? I
did see a really good video where one of the senior Russian generals was walking around, like surrounded by hundreds of T-90M tanks. T-90Ms are the most advanced Russian tank at the moment, and they're a damn good tank. He was walking around surrounded by hundreds of these damn things. That would be kind of cool if they did that. But then I watched a pretty good Russian military analyst a few days ago, which I put on the Discord, Mitch, that I even pointed out to you. And he said he's not sure how this bloody war is going to ever finish.
Yeah, I watched that. So I agreed with him because, I mean, for one, like, the main problem with Russia is there's a lack of political will in the Kremlin. You might have Putin, who's serious enough, but a lot of the people around him is just like, they don't want to decouple entirely from the West because
why? They might as well. They might as well.
I mean, for one, this is one thing that people don't understand about Russians is a lot of them are still. A lot of Russians are generally Westophile, if that's a word. They do call it the West still.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Look, I have no dislike for Russians, none. Hang on, Romy Armada. I got to point this out. The T-14 Armada is, yes, it's the most advanced Russian tank, but I think there's maybe 50 of them in Russia. But the T-90M is a Russian tank that there are at least hundreds of. Okay, and before you like look at tanks, Britain has about 200 tanks. 200 MTB tanks, main battle tanks. So, like, anyone who's got more than that is doing better than Britain, for example. But yeah, and Jules Roy in the chat is a total anti-Russian shill. I've seen him many times before. So yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I just think that this guy we were talking about, Mitch, he was on what's that pro-Chinese dude's stream?
New Atlas, that bloody
New Atlas. Yeah, New Atlas is a total Chinese Communist Party shill, right? And I'm not in favor of the Chinese Communist Party, but because he is a totally Chinese Party shill, he also is pro-Russian. But where I think he loses things is like America and the West could absolutely win a war in the South China Sea, partly because of our nuclear-powered hunter-killer submarines, which are enormously better than anything China has. Different story in Ukraine. In Ukraine, it's an artillery war. It's a traditional war, which the West hasn't done since Korea, at least. We fought wars where a handful of men might get killed occasionally from UADs and all this kind of stuff. The idea that you would lose regular numbers of men just from artillery and all the rest of it, we haven't done that since World War II. And the idea that America can, or Britain can, or any of Western countries can, is fictional. It's fictional. Where this dude worried me a bit was he said, look, Russia needs to do at least another 2 call-ups. And I do actually agree with that. Like, if Russia really wants to crush Ukraine, 1 call-up of 350,000 men isn't enough. You probably need to do 2 more. So you got an extra 1 million men. Then I don't think Ukraine can have any chance. But that's just me.
Yeah, it's one of those things. On one hand, the Russian economy, there's dispute over could they cope with mobilizing up to 2 million men. I mean, fair enough, they've got 2 million in reserve alongside the regular forces, but imagine the logistics for one of supplying all those men. Secondly, there's also the economic burden. So it's one of those things where it's full on I don't know how to phrase it. Trying to find a silver lining as best you can. If you were Putin, you're looking at this and you go, okay, we're still fighting this war. We're gonna have to it's becoming a position where I don't even know what the Russians are aiming on doing in terms of
Mitch.
Do they just plan on fighting off this offensive, then came to attacking to the point like they did after Kursk, for example?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
Mitch, if I was Putin, I wouldn't do 2 more waves of mobilization, but I certainly would do 1 more. If I was Putin, I would do at least 1 more, because I would say, okay, this will give us a lot more men. That's what I would do, but I'm not Putin, obviously. But that's what I would do. 1 more wave of mobilization to give Russia about another 350,000 men. Yeah, I'd do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Let's say, for example, last summer where the Russian advance was quite slow due to lack of infantry. This summer, surely they should be able to advance. I mean, granted, they're not advancing. They are killing lots of Ukrainians in Bakhmut, but then you do get the sneering types to go, well, they've taken only this amount of meters of land in the space of a week.
But Mitch, you've also got to look at the fact that Ukraine is I don't know, roughly the size of Texas in America. It's an enormous area, and 300,000 men don't go long in that kind of area.
Yeah, it was just precisely my point. The Russians just, for reasons unknown, Putin and the Kremlin just didn't want to send enough men into the issue. They just thought they could pull it all off with only 200,000 men at the beginning. And it's only with September where the Russians got humiliated in Kharkov that they finally realized, 200k isn't going to cut it. We're going to need more men. But, this war has humiliated Russian military prestige, which you often think of those parades where they exhibited a sense of power through the perception of their forces. But, you got, for example, Azerbaijan, who are bullying Armenia, which is a Russian ally, supposedly, although Armenia has a very pro-Western government that spend their time screwing over Russian interests as of late. So it's very nuanced. Azerbaijan is Armenia.
I wouldn't say that the Russians have been humiliated in Ukraine at all. But I do think, bearing in mind they're fighting against the whole Western American-led NATO war, they haven't been humiliated at all. In fact, they're winning, but Russia definitely needs more troops. And I don't understand why Putin doesn't turn around and say, all right, we're going to do at least a second tranche of mobilization. I don't understand why they don't do that.
I mean, in the case of Russia being humiliated, what do you think happened in September when well, they lost like, 5,000 square kilometers of land in the space of like 2 weeks, I believe it was, because for one, you had 60,000 of their best men who just slack off because they didn't want to renew their contracts to be in the army. So you just had an entire oblast just fall to the Ukrainians in short order.
You're talking about the south of the south of the battle zone, yes?
No, Kharkov Oblast, where they lost.
Yeah, Kharkov in the south. Yeah.
No, it's in
I
the
don't
east.
know. I'm pretty sure it's in the south, isn't it?
No, it's like in the east, like next to the Russian border. Like the
Oh,
south
okay.
is like
You were talking about up north. I see what you're saying now. Sorry.
it's like because you got Zaporozhye, Kherson, as well as Mariupol in the south, and then the east is like you're talking like Kharkov, Poltava, Chernigov, areas like that, which historically are Russian cities. So if Russia wanted to annex it, it'd be like, I don't know, England annexing Monmouthshire from the Welsh. But be that sort of thing. But
yeah, no, I totally get you. I like I said, I think Russia needs to realize they need quite a lot of soldiers to win this war. I mean, I think they're winning it, but they would win it quicker with more soldiers.
yeah, but then there's also the question of, for example, you got 150,000 Russians who have not been committed to the battle lines. So they've got quite a lot of reserve. I assume the Russian plan is to just wait out what the Ukrainians are doing, i.e., just repel this upcoming offensive, because there's a lot of pressure on Ukraine to do so, given that, it's a case of, okay, the Westerners have to sell victories, and as much as that drone strike on the Kremlin was a humiliation for Russia, it's not really a victory in the same sense as taking
Well,
an entire
it
oblast.
didn't hit anything, did it? It was like just a drone.
I mean, a building got set on fire.
Yeah.
There was one drone that went
all
into
I've
a
seen
flagpole.
from the West is this was a false flag, or this was rich Russians did it. Neither of which I really believe, to be honest. But all right.
People say it's a false flag because it came from the east, which normally Russian air defense works from a westerly direction because, of course, NATO is from the west and Ukraine is also from the west.
But it did no harm. It didn't even destroy the flagpole.
Okay, but the fact that two drones were able to get within striking distance of the heart of the Russian government, even if it didn't hit anything, it's still a humiliation right there. It's same with that. It's same with that German pilot from the 1980s who flew. Was it into Red Square? I think it was.
Yeah. Well, in a light plane, and the Russians were actually not horrible to him, and he was quite quickly released back to the West Germans, as far as I understand.
Okay, but it was a case where there was a complete purge of the air defense, and coincidentally enough, this suited Gorbachev because he was able to just purge all of these sort of Soviet World War II veterans who opposed him all the way. So there was that angle of it, which.
Oh look, I'm complicated, all right. I'm an old Cold War soldier in some respects, but in this particular war in Ukraine, Russia's fighting for the right, and Ukraine is fighting for globalist glorious overlords and transvestite story hour. And anyone who doesn't understand that is a moron in my respect.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what you get the sort of pro-Ukraine right-wingers who, when you look at them, they're very suspicious from the get-go. Like you get, for example, Richard Spencer, or I don't know.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, then you've got who else? You get the Tory boys who have just gone completely pro-Ukraine.
They're all insane anyway, so don't worry about them. They're all trying to pretend the Conservative Party is still conservative under Indian banker Rishi Sunak. I'm sorry, they're just not.
Yeah, I mean, what? Like, for example, when we came to this coronation, I've just largely been apathetic about it. Whereas the Tory boys will argue, oh, well, the institution is inherently traditionalist. And I go, well,
Yeah.
But I mean, the people comprising that institution are completely indifferent.
It's a
to
skin
how
suit.
the country-
It's a skin suit.
Yeah, it's like being it'd be like similar to something like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example now.
Yeah, no, it's just a skin suit, Mitch. It's like, yeah, it's a little bit like Queen Elizabeth II's coronation in 1953, but only a little bit like. But insofar as it's a little bit like, we should all love it. That's really what it is. That's why I didn't watch it. That's why I'm not supporting it. King Charles III is my king because I'm an Englishman, but do I support him? Not a lot. And do I think, in inverted commas, Queen Camilla is a queen? Not on your life. I'm sorry. Never, ever, ever.
I mean, that's the problem, though, isn't it? Is that our royal family is pretty much indifferent. You got William and Kate, who, Kate is stylish
who
because
might,
she's,
to be fair, might be all right in their time. They're my best hope, to be honest.
Yeah, okay. I mean, with Kate, I quite like her style. I'll give her that. Like, she's a very feminine woman, which contrasts to.
And her husband seems to me a pretty trad bloke too.
I don't know. I mean, I imagine if you were to ask Prince William tomorrow, like, what does he think about? I don't know. If you were to ask him, for example, his view on abortion, I imagine it won't be in keeping with ours. He'll just probably say, he'll probably have it deep down that he supports it, or at the very least, the best you'll get is he doesn't have a position on it. Well, to be fair, the monarchy. I mean, this is my main criticism of the monarchy is they're not allowed to hold any power. They're just an institution that exists for the sake of it. I just don't understand the point of.
Mitch, for the record, I think William and Kate are our best bet for a more based royalty. And by the way, that's a problem, right? Drunk again? Wish I was. But anyway, I think William and Kate are our best bet for a base royalty. I'm not holding my breath on Charles III, but I don't think he'll be king for a long time. He's quite old.
I mean, the Queen lived to the age of, what was it, 94?
I used to hope the good Queen Liz would outlive Charles, but unfortunately she didn't. But that was just me. I mean, it was just me.
Yeah,
I'm no fan of Charles, and to say I'll never call Camilla Queen ever, ever, ever. She's a vile old divorcee, and fuck her. Excuse me.
I mean, I don't really know much about it other than, what was it? Charles wanted her to be some sort of surrogate mother because.
Yes, he did.
And
he also claimed he wanted to be our tampon. And I've had Tory boys claiming to me that what man never wanted to be in a woman? All right, I get that. I do get that. But, I don't know any man who ever wanted to, drink some woman's menstrual blood except Charles. Sorry. Never met anyone who did. and because that's the actual truth.
Yeah.
Did you ever want to be a tampon, Mitch? Not me. Sorry, never did.
I mean, in the past, I've been degenerate back when I was like into the goth
Mate,
scene,
I've been
but there's
degenerate
no way.
and still am degenerate, but I never wanted to be a woman's tampon ever.
Like I've known
I don't
stuff
like
stuff
menstrual
like that.
blood.
Nah.
I don't like menstrual blood.
I've never understood that. Like, you get those, female quote unquote artists who smear themselves with their own period blood. I never understood the point behind that.
Lovely, yeah. It's so pretty. And Charles actually wrote to Camilla, "I want to be your tampon." I'm sorry. That is not a male thing to write to a woman. And Jules Roy in the chat, who's an absolute how can I describe him? Either a lefty or a neocon, is laughing. Yeah. Well, I laugh, but not for the same reason you do, Jules Roy. Sorry, I don't know any real traditional man who would ever say to a woman, "I want to be your tampon." I've had blokes saying to me, "Oh yeah, blokes want to be inside women as a tampon." No, I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. Jules Roy, you're not a fascist or a neocon or a leftist, but you might well belong to some Western nasty group. But yeah, I just don't get it. I'd never write such a thing to a woman, but Charles did, and she's old and ugly and a divorcee, and she's never going to be queen to me ever.
I don't know what you make of the argument of like, so for example, you'll get the Tory boys about, "Oh, it's the institution we should support," but like they don't really talk about the people who comprise it. As in, so let's say, for example, Prince Charles. I imagine, like, I won't be surprised if he invites Greta Thunberg in short order to just shill everything based to do with the green agenda. Which makes me think, well,
Charles is pretty into the green agenda, but yeah, okay.
I know, but like you know what happened, like because he's now king, he's the legitimate king. He's been crowned, yada yada yada. So they'll just do some sort of press gay up where it goes, "Oh, the monarchy is working to, working for a green industrial revolution and yada yada yada." It just becomes a point where
King Charles III is my king because I'm an Englishman and I live in Australia, and he absolutely is my king. But I don't like him very much, and I absolutely hate and detest his wife, Camilla. So yeah, I mean that's the position I would take.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just going to. I mean, I can't really give him time because, well, I'll give it. Until he does something that is really scummy. I shall wait. There's nothing much he can do, really, is there? So.
No, there isn't. There isn't a lot you can do, AI. But like the idea that Charles III is this great man, I wish he was. I wish I could think he was, but I know he isn't.
Yeah, we're not gonna get another Alpha the Great anytime soon by the looks of it. So there's a bit of an apathy on my part about it. I mean, I once posted like a bloody meme in the Discord where it goes like, nostalgia is the only form of comfort people have when they have no hope for the future, which is kind of my position spiritually when I think about the monarchy. I just look at the monarchy and go, okay, I can look at for example, Queen Elizabeth's coronation in 1953 and feel a great sense of...
That was still a great... in 1953, Britain was still a great country.
Yeah, we were
and an actual country with like a real center of what people believed.
Yeah, I would say it was decaying. It's like kind of like the
Yeah,
same
no,
stage
it
as, like,
absolutely was decaying. But if you compare the coronation in 53 to this one we just heard today, which, as I said, I didn't watch deliberately, huge difference. There were 3 times as much military. They were all British. They were all straight white men. And all of the crowd were Anglo-Celtic white British people, which is not at all the same as the one we just had. The one we just had is a skin suit. It's a skin suit to suit people like Rishi Sunak and that guy who pretends to wear a kilt in Scotland, who is the First Minister of Scotland, who is only the First Minister of Scotland because the woman who used to run it is a con artist who stole money from Scottish people.
I mean, this will work to Labour's advantage going forward, because at the next general election, I do wonder if there's going to be a part in, like, most normies who will be voting. They'll think to themselves, I can't vote for an Indian, but Keir Starmer is not an Indian; he's white. So,
but Keir
I do wonder.
All right, I totally agree. But let us remember that Keir Starmer was the director of British Crown prosecutions at the time when the so-called grooming gang scandal, when little English schoolgirls as young as 11 or 12 were being mass raped and tortured by Pakistani immigrants. Keir Starmer was the chief of the Crown Prosecution Service at that time and absolutely refused to prosecute most of those Pakistanis. We have to be absolutely true about this. This is one of the most risky things I've ever said for my channel, but it is absolutely true. Keir Starmer is one of the worst so-called English people in history. And I detest the so-called conservatives, but Keir Starmer is at least as bad, if not worse.
Yeah, no, that's right. But I think there'll be a lot of I think in some way, maybe on a subconscious level, I think a lot of people are. I mean, I know for my parents have said they won't vote for the Conservatives because they don't want an Indian running the country, and that's the fundamental reality of it.
But that would be, but that's racist. Man. Can't be racist. I'm joking, by the way.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, but I do wonder if that will play a part in some people, because the thing there is, it's we see in the Conservative Party. I think it's only Jeremy Hunt is like the only white person in the cabinet at this point.
There's almost none.
Oh, but maybe Ben Wallace.
None of them were elected. Like, not one of them was elected. Boris Johnson was elected for what that's worth. The Conservatives elected that bloody woman, and because the grandees, or the people who run Britain, none of which are the actual British people, didn't like her, parachuted in was Rishi Sunak, who is the least democratic prime minister Britain has ever had in her entire history. He's an Indian banker married to an enormously rich Indian woman who has nothing in common with any British people whatsoever.
And
He's
Starkey.
not British. He's not British at all.
No, but the funny thing is, a couple of days ago, before the coronation, Starkey made that point. He said the problem with Rishi Sunak is he said he's not English, and so he can't really resonate with any of the cultural. I think he said like the cultural aspects, the cultural cues of what the coronation and everything, and the historical importance of it. Because Rishi Sunak can only view it, and he did it in his tweet. He just viewed it as like a graph for economic growth because we can make some money in this and we have sort of tourism in this area, but he can't. Apart from that, that's the only thing he can view it as. You can't view it as anything is significant. And he can't. He just physically can't. He can't do it.
I would have fought Rishi Sunak in the Indian Mutiny when he was trying to butcher English women and children, and I would have bayoneted him. But that's just me, as an Englishman, of course, because trying to kill English women and children is something that would make you kill somebody else, which is what I would do. That's kind of why I joined the British Army.
Savage Javid is one of the worst out of all.
Oh
of them.
yeah, even worse.
I think he is worse than he's just he is one of the worst. And I think somebody raised the point about on the census, certain towns in the UK where the majority is like Asian, and his response when I think it was just like a member of the public who it was like, so what? His tweet response was, so what?
100%.
And that's all you need. That's all you need to know about it. They didn't care.
Real British people are Anglo-Celts. They're the only real British people, and anyone else who tries to tell you something different is a lying bastard or a leftist, which is the same thing. I'm sorry, but you can't say that in the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party has more non-British ministers than real British ministers.
Yeah.
But don't think for 1 second Labour would be any different. This is where people get it wrong. Labour won't be any different. Labour will be even worse, because what we have in the UK at the moment, between the so-called, in inverted commas, Conservative Party and the Labour Party, is a uni-party. It's the same as the Democrats and Republicans in America, or the Liberals and Labour in Australia. It's a uni-party. They totally agree on 99% of what they want to do. And anyone on the right has to break that. We have to break that.
We did have local elections this week as well in the UK and England. And I mean, as you can imagine, the Labour, Lib Dems and Independents and others picked up from the Conservatives. Conservatives did, they lost quite a few councillors, over 1,000 councillors. But what did happen, which I thought was quite interesting, was there were several scenarios where the candidates, I can't remember which council this was in. I think it was actually in a relatively safe Conservative area, but you had Conservative councillors who were Indian subcontinent origin, Abdul, Saeeds, you get the picture, right? With names like that, that's the Conservative ones. And then you had like Greens and Labour, who were just like John Smith, okay, or like Emily West, okay, and in as you can imagine, the people who voted, which would be like Conservative voting areas in normal situations, they voted in for Green councillors and Labour councillors. And the reason I raised that point earlier was, I think in some way, the Labour are sort of playing on that, in the sense of they understand that if presented that then people may actually vote on a in-group preference. And the thing that was, the Conservative Party is pretty much being run by like Indian, like an Indian caste. And that Rishi Sunak reportedly threatened Ulster Unionists with the United Ireland. I can believe that. He doesn't give a damn about the
he
union.
didn't reportedly do it. He actually did. I saw.
I don't see how
I remember he was.
Sorry.
I remember he gave there was an interview where he was asked about Scottish independence and the benefits of the union, and he wouldn't talk. He wouldn't even defend the union, and like even like shitlib David Cameron could muster something to defend the concept of the United Kingdom,
But
the
you
union.
cannot, you cannot call Rishi Sunak a traitor because he's not British. So he's absolutely not a traitor.
Yeah.
He's an Indian. He's not a traitor. I mean, Rishi Sunak can slag Britain off as much as he likes. And nothing he says makes him a traitor because he's not British. This is the absolute thing you need to realise. And unless British people realise it, I mean, I think British people are lost anyway, to be honest. But unless you realise at least the fact that the British Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, no matter how anti-British he is, can never be called a traitor, unless you realise that, because he's not British, doesn't like the British, is not even slightly related to the British, unless you realise that, you'll never get what's going on in the modern world. I mean, at least in America, Americans can pretend that the like fucking moronic Biden is somehow American, which of course he's not. He's totally anti-American. But they can at least pretend that. But in Rishi Sunak, Britain has a prime minister who has no relation to the British people whatsoever. None. That's the truth.
No, I mean, all he does is he sounds. I think it's the only aspect is he sounds British, and that's it. I mean, but even barely
Well,
that.
he doesn't sound British either. He sounds Indian British, but that's not British.
Yeah. He sounds a bit like Tony Blair, actually, in some funny way.
Well, I mean,
if you ever listen to him,
Tony Blair is an evil scum. So yeah, Sunak probably does sound a bit like Tony Blair in that respect.
the same sort of vocal patterns,
Yeah, but Tony Blair is a totally anti-British evil scum, who's not even Jewish, by the way. But
no, and Tony Blair had absolute contempt for the Unionists in Northern Ireland, bent over backwards,
and all real British people. That's what Tony Blair. Tony Blair has total contempt for all real British people who have the slightest bit of patriotism.
Yeah, and like the British establishment, bent over backwards for the IRA, Sinn Féin, demonized and just ignored and degraded the Unionists, whether it be the Democratic Unionists or the Ulster Unionists. Unionism in Northern Ireland in general, was demonized as as the problem. That they were targeted as the problem, but were they receiving Semtex from Libya or big money drives from like Boston and Chicago and other American cities?
Or were they the British people who wanted to stay part of Britain? My God, the bastards!
Yeah. Were they the bandits known as like the bandits of County Armagh? No, they weren't.
I did tours in Northern Ireland, and in the end, in fact, about a third of the way through my first tour, I worked out Ulster Unionists didn't want to kill me.
No, in most cases, they, especially in East Belfast, they arose. I mean, largely it arose from gangs, and that's a separate thing because there was a gang culture there anyway. But these groups like the UFF, the UDA, the UVF, which was the largest one of them all, they arose.
None of which, by the way, were really targeting British soldiers.
No, they would target
The Pyra scum.
Yeah, Sinn Féin, nationalists in general, nationalist figures, and they would even. I mean, I think the UVF would actually do attacks in the Irish Republic. They would launch operations in the Irish Republic in some cases.
But nothing compared to the number of Pyro operations that were launched against British soldiers, and much more often against civilian women, children, and old people in Northern Ireland.
No, I mean, I think one thing that is overlooked in some ways is the amount of support they got from America. I'm not just talking about like
huge amounts.
I'm not just talking like some like random.
You're talking about NORAID and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, and not just like some random groups in like Boston of nobodies, but really like part of the American establishment.
Oh yeah, people like Joe Biden, absolutely. Joe Biden.
Yeah, the Kennedy networks. I mean,
Yep. 100%, mate. I don't disagree with you a tiny bit. And actually, I even knew Americans who were Protestant ancestry who had given money to NORAID because they didn't realize that there was a difference between being a Protestant Irishman and a Catholic Irishman. They didn't even realize there was a difference.
Yeah. I mean, and this went on, and this is why the IRA were so well funded, why they were so well, they actually had like proper like state backing, like several state backing, and what did the UVF 100%. And what the UVF and the others had? I mean, they really had to rely on. Actually, I don't think the Ulsters. I mean, they had like their support in Scotland and groups in England, but apart from that, they didn't really have any international support from anyone else. I don't think.
No, they basically didn't. Like I said, the overseas Irish community largely didn't even realize there was a difference between an Ulster loyalist Protestant and an Irish Catholic. They didn't even realize that.
I see. Alice said the IRA won the information war. Yeah.
Well, not to me, they didn't. But then I used to hide next to curbs against IRA snipers, and once killed one of the bastards. So there we go. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, look at modern Ireland. What do you say about modern Ireland? It's even worse than modern England, and that's modern Britain, and that's even saying something, isn't it?
I mean, you forget, but within my lifetime, homosexuality was, I think it was still outlawed in the Irish Republic.
As was abortion, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, as was abortion, and Roman Catholicism was still like the dominant. The conservative. There was still like a dominant conservative faction of Roman Catholicism in public life in the Irish Republic.
Yeah, look, my mother was Irish from County Tipperary. My dad was Church of England and from England. So I can kind of see both sides of this. But my hope ultimately is that Southern Ireland realizes its real place in the world would be to be in some sort of union with Great Britain, because that would be the only way that we could actually unite again. And Irishmen and British guys are not so very different, in my opinion.
And I think a lot of propaganda and boomer civil rights.
Yeah,
Bullshit that's been-
there's those are propaganda and bullshit, but look at some of the great Irish regiments in the old British Army. You know, like the 88th Connaught Rangers and people like that. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just think it's a fake deal. It's always been a fake deal. And particularly these days in 2023, it's a totally fake deal. We have much more in common than we have against each other. Brits out, Somalians in is not a way to run your country.
Yeah, with Ireland, I mean,
Yeah.
I'd say, to be quite honest, I mean, I imagine the Irish in terms of countries that get on with, in terms of like the people and culturally, mentality, etc., etc. But they get on with us the best as a country. But like, you do get the whole IRA tendency where it goes, the Brits are our imperialist oppressors, so anything that spites them is good for us.
But Mitch, to be fair, the provisional IRA were always run by Marxists, and they were totally Brits out, Somalians in. And if you now look at Sinn Féin in Southern Ireland, Sinn Féin in Southern Ireland is totally in favour of mass third world immigration into Ireland, and in inverted commas, new Irish people taking over Ireland, so it's no longer a white country. That's just like it's just what they support. It is what they support.
Yeah,
yeah, it's like
it's globalization politics.
Yeah, it's like you have Patrick Pearse, for example, who is like the quintessential Irish nationalist. I mean, I think it was his father came from Birmingham, so it was like he was half English himself. And then you've got Wolfe Tone, who I believe was a Protestant of our Ulster stock,
supporting the French Revolution.
Yeah, and it's like, what else? You got Guinness, which is seen as like an Irish symbol, but they contributed thousands upon thousands of pounds to unionist causes, especially back when Edward Carson was leading the movement against Ireland setting off on itself.
I don't blame them, because Guinness is actually quite nice. I kind of like Guinness, actually. I drink it on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, it's very ironic when you get Irish nationalists go, "Oh, Guinness is a very Irish thing," and you go, "Okay, but Guinness openly supported the unionists, especially during, like the UVF, I believe they were called."
Yeah.
So yeah, they were buying weapons from them, if I remember correctly.
But Mitch, what you got to look at as an Irishman these days is, would the 1916 Dublin Rebellion guys, did they really want Brits out and Somalians in? Because I don't think they did. I don't think that was their deal. I really don't think that was their deal. And I don't. Many Irish and British guys have been friends and mates. I've had Irish mates, many. Many of us are friends. Not many Irish guys are mates with Somalians and like Pakistanis. Really, they're not. And I say that to Seamus O'Brien in the chat, for example. You know, it's just like, it's not true. Or Brian Borrow. Or Brian Borrow, for that.
Look, yeah, I'd say in the case of Britain and Ireland, I mean, I'd say we get on as close together as, I don't know, Sweden and Norwegians, or the Finnish and Swedish, or, I don't know, Russia and Belarus, or Germany and Austria, etc., etc. So that's my feeling of what I would say about Britain and Ireland is really we're very brotherly, even though there's all bad blood between us in historical terms. But like, it's one of those things where, so it's like, for example, I can look at Germans and Dutch and Scandinavians as brotherly to us as well, but that's because we Anglos are a Germanic people.
Yep.
But I also can look at the Irish, the Welsh, and the Scots as being also brotherly to me because we've existed with them for a long period of time. We've played in the same wars, etc., etc.
100%, but 100%, Mitch. But also, like the British people are Anglo-Celtic, so yes, everything you say there, Mitch, about the Anglo-German Germanic side is totally true. But also, the British people are Anglo-Celtic, so you have Celts in Wales and in Scotland and in Ireland and even in Cornwall. And now those guys are all also equally British and also bled in all our wars. So
yeah,
and like all of us going back beyond those people had like the guys who built Stonehenge and this kind of shit, So it's we have a very long history because Britain is a very, very old and great country. And I just think that all of those people have much more in common than we have against each other.
Yeah, so what, for example, I don't know the best of first. Because England, in a phenotypical way, we're like a mix of like sort of Germans and Welsh and Irish, really. It depends on where you go, I suppose.
And Scots and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like in terms of like England, for example. I imagine like genetically, we're like on one hand we're very similar to the Welsh, Scots, and Irish genetically, but I also can imagine we also do have some genetic affinity to the Germans and the Dutch as well.
Oh, look, Mitch, I think the vast majority of English people have a mixture of Anglo-Celtic. They might have some Norman as well. And they absolutely have Scottish and Welsh and Irish in their lineage, and Norwegian as well because of the Danes. Sorry,
I'm afraid I'm going to have to go now. Thanks for having me on, though.
Oh, mate, you're always very welcome, I thank you very much for joining us. On,
and thank you, chat. It's been pretty good evening, good session today. So, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, mate. You're always most welcome, and thank you for joining us.
No worries. See you around.
Did you have anything you wanted to plug before you left? All right, no worries. Look, I just think, like we are all so intermixed in the British Isles that it doesn't matter much,
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. Talking about like what I would think personally, it's like, I would say we are Anglo-Celtic, as in, we straddle two worlds. We straddle into the Celtic world because, let's face it, the Celts, we're very close to them. But then you also got the Germanic side of us because our language is Germanic, etc., etc. So that and it's like, for example, I showed him a Discord earlier about Anglish, which it's like you're Irish. I don't know. I'm losing my train of thought here, but
was that the thing about like Norman French words being brought into English that you put up in the Discord?
Yeah, it's basically just English is basically just imagine English, but without any foreign. Without any non-Germanic.
That's an interesting website, which is well worth looking at. But on the other hand, you can say that it is possible in English to be more precise because of all that stuff that's come into English. You can be more precise in English than almost any other language.
Yeah, I was just like
I mean, not to say
thought-
most people are, because they're not, because most people are not very good at English, but you actually can be totally precise in English, which in almost any other language, you're relying on people working out stuff which is not just in the letters of the words.
Yeah, it's. I mean, on one hand, I can like English in terms of, for example, you have like a Germanic word, but then you also have a Romance language word, and so you've got a luxury of choice. But then
Yep.
it becomes a situation where you're thinking English is like in a position where it's trying to have two souls simultaneously. So that on one hand, because this is one problem I got with English is, so when we got ruled over by the Normans, they treated the language like it should be descended from Latin when it doesn't work like that. Like they try to treat it as though we should just be French 2.0.
But Mitch, to be fair, in the end, the Normans were absorbed by the English, not the other way around.
Okay, but like they have impacted our culture. Like, for example,
Absolutely, they did. Like you've got pork, which I think is English, and you have pig.
Yep, pig is the Anglo-Saxon word, but pork.
Sorry, you have pig, which is Anglo-Saxon, and pork, which is the Norman word. But like a pig is an animal, whereas pork is a bit of meat.
Yeah, I mean, with English, I mean, I don't know how they replace some of those words. Like, for example, the sciences, there's a reason why we borrowed so much Greek into our language, because the Greeks were just so damn smart as people. They can explain concepts that our Anglo-Saxon forefathers never came up with. Or you get or it's like they reckon the main reason why
our Anglo-Saxon forefathers were also too busy defeating the Danes, which England was the only country that did, by the way. We were too busy defeating the Danes, the Norsemen, the Vikings. And England was the only country that managed to do that, which I think is worth pointing out.
Yeah, it's a situation where that is one like pure example of Anglo supremacy right there. Because I mean, like you had the French, for example, the French, they just gave land to them. They just gave up. The Germans, I think they struggled a lot, especially the Dutch, where they could never do anything about it. The Russians, they had to absorb the Vikings rather than fight them because, And then who else? I think that's it, really, from what I mean, apparently I saw like a map where it said the Vikings raided through as far as Afghanistan, through the rivers of you got the river Volga into the Caspian Sea.
They also got across apparently to North America, to places like Newfoundland and what have you.
Yeah, Leif Erikson, which I do. I mean, it'd be funny if let's say Christopher Columbus goes over to America and he discovers like a Viking colony, which is basically
that would have been cool.
Just imagine it'd be Iceland 2.0 because they'd just be completely isolated and their language would be so much weirder because they've never had contact with anyone else for all that time, or contact would have been very scarce. So it'd be like looking at a time capsule,
So it would have been cool, but I mean, there is evidence in Newfoundland and bits of the eastern bit of Canada that there were Viking settlements there at one stage. So they absolutely did discover North America before Columbus.
Yeah, I suppose it's up to history to find out what happened there in terms of
probably not enough people to sustain the colony.
I mean, you ever heard of Roanoke Island, I believe it's called, where
that completely
that completely disappeared without it. because you had some writing on the walls. That was the only lead we have of what happened there. So Roanoke Island, I mean, yeah. Whereas
Well, I
James
mean,
Town was a success.
also remember that like Vikings from Iceland, which I've been to, by the way, great country, except the booze is so ridiculously expensive.
What the countries for you?
Yeah, just vile, man. But the Vikings from Iceland went to Greenland, particularly in an era when there was a bit of global warming, and so Greenland was like a little bit more habitable than it is today. And from Greenland to go to Newfoundland and what have you was not such a big deal. And they absolutely did do it. And Canadian chaps in Newfoundland and what have you have absolutely proven there are Viking settlements there. No doubt whatsoever. It's not like controversial. They just did. They went to Canada. Might not have lasted long, but they did go there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like the Native Americans just wiped America or something.
Yeah, eventually, maybe so, because they didn't have enough colonists. Yeah, I totally agree, Mitch. I think that's absolutely what happened. But they did go there, they did get there, and they got there before Columbus.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember. I think Morgoth actually did a video where he explained, like, England versus Germany, and he said that he reckons that the English are individualistic because the Vikings had that sort of exported that cultural mindset to us, and of course we're a seafaring country as well, so that makes you more individualist as opposed to
vastly more. Yeah,
because you take, for example, Germany. They're more collectivist because they had to be. They've got the French on one side, the Russians on the other.
Yep.
I mean, to the south, they've got Italians, etc. They've not
got whereas the Britons were like seaborne explorers, where every single man on the ship had a vital job, and if he fucked up, the whole ship could die.
Yeah, it was a situation where, like, on one hand, we could be collectivist insofar as we work together as a team, but individualist in that we enabled every individual to express his full potential in a way that you couldn't have in, say, Central Europe or whatever, or Eastern Europe.
Oh, 100%. And like another thing that people often get wrong, Mitch, is that like if you look someone like Captain Cook, for example, Captain Cook was a merchant navy sailor, but he could read and write and do maths and learn to navigate. So he joins the Royal Navy, yeah? And there was an absolutely proven method of someone like Captain Cook joining the Royal Navy as an able seaman, which he would have done, and he did, and then becoming an officer. There was a route for that, which was called Master's Mate. You became a Master's Mate, and if you were a good Master's Mate and your captain liked you, you got promoted to midshipman, and then you got promoted to lieutenant.
Yeah. One thing I found funny on my English website was they plan on replacing the word captain with shiplord, which I don't know what to make of that, to be honest. It sounds all right, but I mean, imagine referring to your captain of a ship as shiplord. I don't know how that would work.
All right, I'm going to be doing a stream the same time tomorrow as this stream, by the way, which is going to be a historical review of Master and Commander, the film from 2003 with Russell Crowe, which is one of my favorite films, and I'll probably get into that on that stream. And I hope I'll get a couple of guests, but we'll see. But anyway, yeah, I do. Mitch, you're quite right. The naval side of Britain made Britain more independent than Germany probably was, I guess.
Yeah, because I mean, Germany's a land power, and we don't have a moat like we do. Like, we've got the English Channel, as well as the rough seas that warded off the Spanish Armada, for example. But if you're German,
along with the Royal Navy, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Royal Navy, goes without saying, but like you take, for example, the Germans or the Russians or the Italians, their land powers
Yeah.
who had to contend with hostile neighbours, and they don't have the same luxury as we do in the form of a Royal Navy, a seaborne tradition, as well as the English Channel acting as our like eternal moat, so to speak.
Mitch, look at the greatest empire in the world there's ever been. Like a third of the world and a fourth of the world's population. And then look at Great Britain on a world map. And that was all Great Britain.
If you want to get
by far not the world's greatest, not the smallest country in the world. Some people go too far on that one. Like I think Britain is the 8th or 9th largest island in the world, but a relatively small country that takes over a third of the world just because they are sailors, and soldiers, and explorers, and everyone were just so fucking brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that best explains Anglo supremacy is the fact that Australia was colonized by us, and we just like managed to tame the wilderness, despite how hostile it can be at times. You know, the Dutch refused to colonize it. I think I wouldn't be surprised if the Chinese were able to explore it, but they themselves found it uninhabitable.
The Chinese definitely like went along bits of northwest Australia. But you're right. Only the British colonists were able to tame the place. I mean, Chris Gard's got some great stuff on this, and hopefully will soon do his part 3 of Australian history. Only British colonists could arrive in Australia, which was a very hostile environment, and kind of like turn the place into like a really productive, good part of the world. Same thing in New Zealand, and to some degree, the same thing in Canada. Brits in those days, like especially Brits who would like go abroad and push themselves, they could do shit, you know.
Yeah, I always find it because I mean, you have the other empires, like you take the Spanish Empire and the French empires, but I don't know how to best explain it with the British Empire, but like there's a certain entrepreneurial spirit or like a conquering spirit about us that best distinguishes us. Because I mean, for example, the Spanish, the main way they kept their empire was breeding with the natives all the damn time, to the point where everyone was just some coffee-coloured mixed race there. The French kept control by like practically doing like for a mixture of I don't know how best to explain it, but like, you know, they'd often have tribes go again.
Yeah.
Would often do it the wrong way. I don't know how best to explain it, but I mean, for example, you have a French and Indian war where we have the Iroquois on our side while they have the Huron. And and then you have the French Empire who just got chucked out of North America and India in the 7 Years' War. So it's like I don't know. I don't know how best to explain it, but like there's something about the British Empire.
If you watch movies like The Last Mohican, The Last of the Mohicans, which is not a bad film, I don't hate it, but the British Army was a bit more effective than it is generally shown in that film. You know, the Indians didn't win every battle. The French certainly didn't. And not all British soldiers were like, "Oh, I'm going to die from a tomahawk." Sorry, didn't. That's not really what happened. But of course, everyone with any sanity knows that's the truth. But yeah, I might even do a video on that at some stage. 7 Years' War might be interesting. I don't know. I don't know. Like, I am a historian. I love history. If you don't know your history, you don't know who you are. And George Roy says the French did okay at Yorktown. Yeah, the one time you weren't beat, George, the one and single time. But yeah, you can do whatever you like. But in the end of the day, if your people are not brave enough on a frontier, which might have been in North America, might have been Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, it doesn't matter. If your people are not brave enough, you won't win. And back in the day, our people absolutely were brave enough.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of a frontiersman, I mean, the actual reality of a frontier requires that the real rule of survival of the fittest really plays out. So, you know, you take our colonists that we had in the 13 colonies, you can imagine, because for example, I remember reading something like the British elites back home provided all the financial side of things, while the manpower side of the war, especially in North America, was done by the colonists, because for one, they had everything to lose, and B, because they actually knew how to fight within the sort of dense forests of North America. Although I know, like with the French and Indian War, I mean, I think like the first few years we weren't doing too well with it, especially with like George Washington at Fort Duquesne and whatnot. But then you had, what was his name? What, I can't remember his first name. General Wolfe, who triumphed at the Battle of the Plains of Abraham outside Quebec, and so the French just lost all of pretty much lost most of North America, with the exception of Louisiana, which the Americans purchased anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, look, I mean, the British Army did pretty well in the French and Indian War, and actually the British Army did pretty well in the American War of Independence. Like, the British Army won something like 85% of the battles it fought in North America, which is, fairly impressive.
Yeah, I've heard, I can't remember the name of the battle precisely, I think it was the Battle of Long Island or something like that, where George Washington was able to escape because Lord Howe made...
Yeah, very often Washington was able to escape. Didn't win many battles, though.
Yeah, he was I mean, I don't understand why Americans celebrate it so much. I mean, it's like...
I do, because he's an American, but yeah, all right.
Yeah, but in terms of like his military record, he was pretty much mediocre. I mean, it's like looking at Churchill, but American version. When you look at Washington, really. Very mediocre military record.
Except that, like, Winston Churchill eclipsed Britain because of his policies and stupid ideas, whereas Washington made America greater, I guess, sort of. Anyway, but yeah, fair enough. I'm not really.
It's like, for example,
Alice Liddell in the chat says Washington's reputation came from Valley Forge when his army almost fell apart. Yeah, all right, probably does. Fair enough.
Yeah, and also another thing like you find interesting about that period was like the Spanish during the war did take Gibraltar away from us. They besieged it in one of the longest sieges of recorded history, I believe.
Failed,
yeah, and then the French. I mean, I don't think.
the French attacked the British all over the world and generally failed.
Yeah, with the exception of what is it, Yorktown, where the Navy bombarded.
Yorktown, yeah. Yorktown.
But aside from that,
and on top of that, the Dutch attacked the British all over the world, and no one even remembers anything they did. But
yeah, but like I don't know. I mean, I don't know if like you got any books you'd recommend me on the 7 Years' War, because that's a very interesting war, I would say.
Let me think about that, mate, and I'll tell you something. Romy Armada in the chat. Washington was a former British Army officer, and he was. He was a major in the British Army officer, in the British Army. and knew the vulnerability of the British Army, especially regarding skirmishing and guerrilla warfare. I am sorry, Romney Alada, but if you think that stuff had a great deal to do with the American War of Independence, you need to go back and do some more serious reading, because it didn't. I'm sorry, it just didn't. All right, we're coming up to 3 hours, which I'm sure is long enough for this stream. Anything you wanted to promote, Mitch?
I don't know if like shilling back English just to see if like people are interested in whatever. I don't know if that will count.
Yes, for sure.
It's just
stick it in the private chat, and I'll put it in the chat. I'll do the link in the chat if you stick it in the private chat.
It's like it's really just pretty much like my autism at the moment is compelling me to just look at English just to see how some of the words would work.
Fair enough. I think it's. I looked at the site when you put it on the Discord. I think it's interesting. I'm not sure. I think it's an advantage to them, but it's interesting for sure.
I mean, I suppose on one hand, it would make learning German or Norwegian a lot easier because I mean, if we have,
there you go. You are a guy who's gifted on languages. None of that shit would help me learn another language because I'm just like, I just hear hurdy-gurdy or whatever, you know. I can't do languages. I lived in South Africa for 15 years, and at the end of it, I probably knew, I don't know, 30 Afrikaner words.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, with Afrikaans, you can generally be forgiven for not learning the language because, I mean, it's very close to ours anyway. So I imagine if you were to speak English to an Afrikaner, they'd understand.
Oh, no, nearly all Afrikaners speak some English. But like all my South African friends who were English speakers at school, they learned Afrikaans. So everyone was actually bilingual. Like when they say someone's an English speaker or an Afrikaans speaker, all they mean is, what language do you speak at home? That's all that meant.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I imagine Afrikaans would be very similar to Dutch, and Dutch is one of those languages where it's. I mean, I can imagine if you were to put it, say someone off from Indonesia, for example, you put them into a room and you have them listen to both English, Dutch, and perhaps Afrikaans, they won't be able to tell the difference. I won't be surprised.
I took a guy from the Netherlands over to South Africa once on a military history tour, and he said to me, Afrikaans is like baby Dutch.
Yeah,
that's how he could absolutely understand everything everyone was saying, but he said it's kind of like baby Dutch, which makes sense given that the Afrikaners originally arrived in South Africa in the 1650s, and obviously modern Dutch has moved on hugely since the 1650s, and I think that's what he meant.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how Afrikaans would have worked. I mean, I'm thinking, I wouldn't be surprised if they are influenced somewhat by like languages like Zulu and Xhosa, but like with Dutch.
Oh yeah. They had Zulu loanwords. They had some English loanwords too. Absolutely, they did.
Yeah, it's like, I know with Dutch, for example, because they're sandwiched in between us and the Germans, it's like a weird situation where like it's like Dutch is like a midway language between us and the Germans. I can imagine Afrikaans is similar, where it's like midway between English and a lot of these Bantu languages you got in the area.
I wouldn't say it was midway, but like, yes, it definitely has some. It has some Zulu and other African language loan words, and it has some English loan words. It does, for sure. Can I just say, guys, if you want to ask a question or you want to give us a super chat, you can do so. Just go and look at the chat right at the top from entropy, and then you can do both those things. So there you go. Yeah, absolutely right. I think I've put your link in the chat now. Englishfandom.com. Is that the one? Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I put that in there. Guys, if you have a super chat or a question, send us it via entropy, but whatever. Yeah. So I don't know, Mitch. Is there anything else you wanted to plug?
Nah, not for me.
All right. Go and check out AI. Also, go and check out Adam's channel, which is called Bowden Bomber, I believe. Go and check that out. I would also like to give a plug for 2 historic streams I did recently. One with Rupert August on the Anglo-Japanese Naval Alliance from 1902 to 1922. That's a good stream. Go and check it out. And I also did a stream recently with Apostolic Majesty on Anglo-Japanese relations in World War II. So yeah, go and check those out, guys. They're pretty good historic streams I'm fairly proud of. And tomorrow, at the same time as this stream, just tomorrow, I'm going to be doing historical analysis of Master and Commander, the film from 2003, which is based on Patrick O'Brien's brilliant series of about 20 novels, the Aubrey, Maturin canon, which are some of the best historical novels ever written in English. So do go and check those out. Any final thoughts, Mitch?
I suppose I can say in a sense, God save the king, but like it's more of a sort of cry for like God save Britain, and hope that we hope that King Charles does the best for us and doesn't turn into some just eternally annoying green social justice warrior or whatever. Just hope that.
Yeah. I don't disagree, Mitch. Look, King Charles III is my king, like it or not. I hope he won't be a woke king. I hope he will be a good king, but I ain't holding my breath. And Camilla is never going to be my queen, but whatever. All right, I'm gonna play us out with a tune, I guess, as I always do.
Yeah, I suppose my avatar will fit it, I believe.
Yeah, it will. Your avatar will absolutely fit this one. All right, guys, I'm going to play us out with you. Hang on, it's got to play. Okay, that was the Omdurman March, which is a British Army march. Interesting story about that, Val. The colonel of the 21st Lancers, which was the newest British cavalry regiment, had never, and the 21st Lancers had never fought in a battle. In fact, the British Army used to take the piss out of them by saying that their motto was, "Thou shalt not kill." So at the Battle of Omdurman, the colonel of the 21st Lancers, which would have been about 400, 500 blokes, was trotting along, and he saw about something like 600 or 700 dervishes in front of him, and thought, we can charge those lads, and my regiment will finally have been in action. So he did. He formed his troops into line and his squadrons into line, and he charged them. What he didn't realize is that just behind those 500-600 dervish skirmishers, there was what's called a corps, which was a dried up Sudanese riverbed. And inside it were like 8,000 Sudanese dervishes. And so his 400 or 500 troopers charged through these skirmishes, and then suddenly realized there's this great big dip, and in front of them is thousands upon thousands of dervishes. But the British soldiers were so damn good that even though they were fighting hand to hand with the dervishes, with lances and shields, and nothing else, lances and sabers, nothing else, they actually did charge through them. But the 21st Lancers lost almost a quarter of their men killed and wounded. But that ain't bad when you think how hugely outnumbered they were. So back then, British were pretty cool, really, in my opinion. So anyway, guys, do come and join us same time tomorrow for a historical review of Master and Commander, the excellent historical movie from 2003. Thank you very much to my guests, Adam and Mitch and AI. And I'll see you tomorrow. Go well, guys. Yeah, what happens?